right. Hey, what's up, nerds? It is Paul at Radio Free Hammer Hall, and today we are going to be digging into the new Blades of Khorne Battletome. It's been out for I don't know, a few weeks, month maybe. So I thought it'd be be fun to take a little dive in. I have with me that way. Hey, it is that way. I got it right the first time.
Yeah.
Got Josh over here.
I got it wrong.
Josh, who has been on the channel a number of times before, who is one of the mightiest lords of Khorne, and who is apparently really turning to the dark side over there. All we're getting is just like a little silhouette of his face.
Sorry. I'll turn up the light a little bit. I got a baby sleeping on the floor, so I might have to like mute myself and put a pacifier in every once in a while.
It's all good. I know I have been there a couple times, and I'm sure many of our viewers have also been there. Anyway, so part of the premise that we're going with tonight is I have actually been thinking of starting this army. I had an idea for a paint scheme. I have some ideas for a couple of conversions that I want to do. So things are starting to like kind of develop out in that way. And in addition to that, like, what's up? Oh, you were talking to a small child, not to me. Oh.
Yeah.
So the big thing for me is that this is very much in my wheelhouse of like style of book. Like I'm definitely one of those Johnny psychographic profile people, like pretty hardcore. I know Josh is as well. And like this army has long been like right in that zone of being weird Johnny shit. And I'm like, I'm here for it. The models are cool. The rules are cool. I've got some ideas for it. So I'm like, let's fucking go. Let's do this. And, for those of you that maybe just like didn't see the kind of perspective that I'm trying to take on stuff going forward, we really want to focus on what do things do rather than like what are they like, are they good or bad? It's like, what role does this play in the army? That sort of thing. And even points, I think, are not even necessarily as important unless they're like way out of whack, or if you are putting together a list that's like spamming things, which is like not really even my style to begin with. I'm not a big fan of doing that. So yeah, Josh, you are in amongst it with Khorne. You have long been in amongst it. What are you feeling about this book from your experiences so far and your read of it?
So unlike most players, like I've kind of played every. Like I don't stick to like either mortals or demons. I kind of like soup, and I've played both. I own just about everything in Khorne. I've got around 1,200 points worth of models. I own every single model in the lineup, and in most cases, I own many copies of each unit. And
12,000, I assume, not 1,200.
12,000, yeah. I think this is the best book to date. And the main reason I say that is because I just think the internal balance is so positive. You can nearly run anything, and that's what really makes this book so great. And not only can you run everything, it's almost feel like anytime you run a different style of list, the list plays different too. So like it really caters to like specific play styles, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely. I'm definitely excited for that sort of thing. I love when you can take one army and like change some things around and it feels very different.
Oh my God.
It really seems like this army can do that.
It really can, but the one thing I will say is that it's definitely a bigger brain army. Like you really need to think ahead. You need to plan your moves ahead. Your units aren't as efficient as some of the other armies, and it's really the abilities in Battletome that allow you that enable your units. I don't, for example, see a lot of people taking Khorne units as allied units because, quite frankly, they almost need the Battletome to be as good as they could be. Maybe with a few exceptions.
It's funny you mentioned that. I have actually been doing some work on allies recently. Um, so video coming soon on that. But yeah, I started just sort of thinking about the idea of like allies and coalition and how all of that actually functions, and just noticing how infrequently people are using those these days.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, like what even is there, and like why is that? And it seems like all of these armies are really being designed now in a way that like all of the units really rest a lot on the synergy between units and the synergy with the allegiance abilities. And when you take those units outside of that book, like they just do not do the same thing.
Yeah, there's only a few like exceptions, and I mean I don't want to spoil any of those, but I will point them out like as we start talking about the units in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little disappointing to me that like the old soup armies are gone, because that was, that was just crazy fun to explore all of those different things. But I think also part of the problem with that is that it's just extraordinarily difficult to actually balance that. So
Yeah, I was just gonna mention the same thing if you didn't. Like you said, it also one thing that GW has been really good with recently is like creating a flavor for each army and like really doing a great job at showcasing that flavor. I think Nurgle was the first time I really saw that come into fruition with all the like disease rolls and things like that. It really felt like you were infecting your opponent. Felt very Nurgle. And like ever since that book, it's like every book afterward really just has a flavor to it that exemplifies that army. And I like you said, I think it would be difficult to not only include that flavor but maintain balance across armies.
yeah. And it's interesting. I noticed in my preliminary analysis on the like the allies and coalition, all of that is very, very narrative driven. That does not have a whole lot to do with like doing something for gameplay reasons.
Yeah, but that said, like Khorne does have like a lot of pretty good um, allies. I mean, Khorne's pretty accepting outside of Tzeentch and Slaanesh. As long
Yeah.
as you're chaos. Oh yeah, no Skaven either.
Yeah, Nurgle's the only one that puts up with them, and only a few.
Yep.
All right. Anyway, enough of previews of other videos I'm going to do soon, I guess. So you want to get into this nonsense?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So our basic allegiance abilities. We have our slaughter hosts. That's our sub factions. That is a few pages into the future. Murderous to the last. You're making whenever you're bloodbound die, your mortals, you get to roll dice, and I have excuse me, roll dice, and is it the thing is in front of this window, and I don't have the book in front of me.
There's okay. So it's Locus of Fury first,
Oh, I totally
but
missed that. Yeah.
but Locus of Fury is the ability where all your Blades of Khorne demons, more than 8 inches away from enemy units, have a work of 5+. And if a friendly demon unit retreats, it's no longer granted that 5+ any longer. So, no, what are your first thoughts on that ability?
It's it guards you against magic and shooting is really what it does, right? Um, and it's almost like that, they could have said that like first battle round, because after that, it's not like this is going to actually come into play much.
It, yeah.
It's very narrative that, like, Khorne hates shooting and magic, so we're going to give you protection against it. I don't know how much it's actually going to help you, though. Like, there's a whole bunch of armies that this is going to do literally zero ever.
So you'd actually be surprised at how effective this is and how ineffective it is sometimes. So, like, the times where this is really effective is where, like you said, in the first 2 rounds, maybe 3, many more if you're playing against a ranged list like KO. You're going to see a lot of benefit from this because they don't typically want to come within 8 inches of it anyway.
Yeah.
At least not early on. And so what you can do is you can stuff your demons into things like cover, and it makes them really, really hardy. So, like, one thing I did was I stuck my skull cannons into cover as a screen at one point against a shooting army because they had a lot of, like, deep strike. So to keep my units from being shot, I stuck my cannon in the cover, and so they really the best targets they had were all these very tanky things, and it just happened that skull cannons are really great when you stick them in cover. They have a 3-up save and a 5-up ward, and so very survivable. But against kind of a soup list where, like, someone's got a mix of ranged and shooting units, or sorry, ranged and melee units. I mean, they can just push their melee units into within 8 inches quite easily. And then just shoot the unit they want to kill. So again, it's not very helpful if your enemy is coming at you in a melee centric manner in any capacity. But it's definitely helpful against, like, magic and shooting, like you mentioned.
Yeah. It's cool. It's fun. It's narrative. I think it's definitely like if you think about the fact that you have it in certain matchups, you can really leverage a lot off of that.
Yeah, and then the last line, like, where if you retreat, like, you don't benefit from the locust anymore. I mean, it's really just flavorful. It rarely happens. I mean, usually you're not retreating with a demon unit. Usually a demon unit's more of a glass cannon, and it's either dying or killing something. So very rarely are you retreating and worrying about this. This is not something you care about. If it's a tactical retreat, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't even come up because by the time you're retreating, you're within an inches of another unit anyway.
Yeah. All right. How about Murderous to the Last?
So this is every time your unit or your models, your bloodbound models, are slain from melee attacks, melee weapons specifically. So not abilities. So if your guys die from a Murderous to the Last ability, you actually don't get to Murderous to the Last back. So pretty similar to the Magmadroth, except it's on a 5-up instead of a 4. It's per model, so it's not per wound. So in some cases it feels like that, but, like, for example, Skull Reapers are 3 wounds; they don't get 3 rolls. I think this ability is better than people realize, but it is chip damage, and a lot of armies are very resistant to chip damage, so it's going to be fairly effective against some lists and less effective against others. I think it's a really good ability, and I've had many cases where, like, you're just shoving, like, low quality units into combat and, like, going for murder rolls and hoping to roll reasonably well and kill something that's worth more points than the unit you've pushed into combat.
Yeah. It seems like this is one of those abilities that you're not going to want to really, like, plan on it unless you're just, taking something like Blood Reavers where it's just a whole bunch of bodies that have a bad save, and the whole point of them is to go die and be a bomb. Like, otherwise, it seems like this is something you shouldn't count on, and it's just like bonus damage.
Here, just one moment.
All right. Yeah. I definitely like this ability. There's a whole bunch of armies that have been doing things like this lately. I think it's definitely good. Like, your guys just die and they explode, and it's a nice little, like, win for losing sort of a mechanic.
Yeah, so it's not a bad ability. Like it's an excellent ability, and sometimes you do mathematically count on it to kill a unit because you're like, well, I can do, statistically do a certain amount of damage, and I should finish them off if they attack me back.
Yeah.
Right. And I have done that in many cases and succeeded. And sometimes it's not so great, like any other die roll in the game. And other times it's even better than you would think it would. Like all of a sudden it just does an outrageous amount of damage.
Yeah.
So overall, like this ability is really cool. It's something that they always should have had, I think. And as you'll see, like if we were to compare this book to previous books, this actually reduces a lot of prior book die rolling in a way I think is very effective.
And this is basically just the ability that your blood warriors used to have just now across your whole army.
Yes, it's kind of like just an attack on death ability without having to go through all of the hit, wound, and save rolls. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's definitely a more elegant solution than Fight on Death. And probably does about the same amount of damage.
Yeah, it's similar. So like, if someone's attacking a unit that's fully buffed up, obviously they're not going to do as much damage as they would have in the past, but let's face it, most of the time your opponent isn't diving headfirst into your buffed up unit of blood warriors willingly.
Yeah. Cool. Hatred of Sorcery, all of your units basically have a 5-up spell ignore. And if you succeed, you get a blood tithe point.
This is probably like one of the most powerful abilities in the book. And like,
yeah,
it can completely shut down some armies. And it's very important to recognize that it's effect spelled with an A. So if someone casts a spell that would impact your units in like an aura, like the horror ghast, for example, and you move your units into the aura of the horror ghast, they're affected by that prior to the what the heck's the phase called? The battle shock phase. So it's just almost like the aura is affecting them prior to the battle shock phase. So you get to roll dice immediately after you enter the aura. And if you leave the aura and then re-enter the aura, you get to roll dice again. But you have to like leave and then come back. You can't do it all in the same move. You can't do like the zigzag pattern. This ability is so strong that you'll find that many opponents won't even cast spells against you. Like they'll just withhold it because giving you blood type points, very similar to giving Slanesh depravity, is so powerful that you can very easily cost your opponent the game. I mean, this is going to be especially good against armies like Sylvaneth with like the Warsong Bomb, or even the new Seraphim armies. Like this ability is going to have them second guessing what they're going to do, especially if they have a lot of spellcasters.
Yeah. All right, Legions of Chaos. This is just your standard Chaos Army coalition rules. You get 2 out of every 4. Can be, Slaves to Darkness, marked Khorne. None of them could be wizards. And then 1 in every 4 can be Beasts of Chaos, and they get the Khorne keyword, and they cannot have the Tzeentch, Slanesh, or Wizard keywords. Pretty standard. That's like what all of these armies have. All right, up next. These are not necessarily in the order that they're in the book. It's just the order that made sense to me when I was putting them together. So blood tithe tables. You get a blood tithe point every time a unit is wiped out, and then there's a whole bunch of other abilities that will also give you blood tithe, as we've already noticed with the Hatred of Sorcery. And then we have these 2 different tables for ways to utilize your blood tithe. You have your blood tithe rewards that are a bunch of special abilities, and then the summon demons of Khorne that is letting you, as it would suggest, summon demon units. So you use these at the end of your hero phase for the rewards. And is it the same for the summoning, or is that at the in movement? You're muted.
Summoning is at the end of the movement phase, and
Yeah.
everything's in multiples of 8. So within 16 of a Khorne hero or altar, or sorry, within 8 of a friendly Khorne hero, within 16 of a skull altar, and more than 9 from enemy units.
Yep. All right. So let's just quickly go down the Blood Tithe rewards. Murder Lust for 1 Blood Tithe. You can pick up to 3 friendly units and move them each d6 inches. That's super good. It's very random, but just the ability to consistently do that for 1 Blood Tithe. Also important to note, you can do Blood Tithe abilities in your opponent's turn as well.
Yeah, end of their hero phase. And the important thing to note in this ability is not necessarily that it's random and that it gives you movement, but more so that they can finish within 3 inches of enemy units. So you can drive your army up the field and then, position yourself so that on the subsequent turn, if maybe they decide to take a double, you could potentially punish your opponent by like engaging their units in a way that's not so great for them and forcing them to make retreats if they want to accomplish a battle tactic or something like that, especially because you know what their battle tactic is by the end of their hero phase. So you're typically going to position your units in such a way where like you'll be able to get this off and reliably end a move within range of their units or like in melee with their units. So that way you force them into like unfavorable positions. So it's very, very powerful. But in terms of like free movement, yes, it's a good ability, but like there's other things in this book that give you so much mobility that this is kind of just a bonus, and it's really cool because it's 1 blood type point. That's probably what makes it so good.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Now, a lot of people are talking like 1 blood type point is too cheap for this ability, and I don't know what you would replace it with on this list. But it's awesome. You use it probably at least 2 or 3 times in a game, maybe more sometimes. It really just depends.
Yeah. For 2 Blood Tithe, Spell Eater Curse, you can just unbind an enemy spell. Like really just strong.
So, I mean, we have obviously like you're typically not going to use this against the aggressive spells because the aggressive spells are going to target your army and they're going to target units, and you almost want your opponent to do that, and you want to roll your 5-ups to get more blood type points. So you're typically going to use this against an army like Lumineth, where they're just trying to cap your command points with the total eclipse, because that doesn't affect your units, that affects you. So you're like, okay, well, how am I going to counter this thing that really hinders my army? Well, this gives you an opportunity to do that without having to take any risk.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Brass Skull Meteor, you pick an enemy unit on the battlefield, roll 8 dice for each 5-up. The unit suffers 1 mortal wound, add 2 to each roll if the enemy has a wounds characteristic of 10 or more, or has 10 or more models.
This is your panic button.
Yeah. I feel like this is one of those things from other reviews that I have heard on this. It's like, people kind of are like, oh, this isn't that great, blah,
it's
blah,
great.
blah. Like,
ignore them. It's really good.
Yeah.
This is kind of
like, okay, you mean I can drop 8 dice on a monster and do mortal wounds on 3-ups. So that's going to give me 5 mortal wounds probably.
So it's any unit with 10 or more wounds. So like some of these things aren't monsters; they're just. I think there's some Stormcast units that are really annoying to deal with, but like if you hit them with mortal wounds, it's not so bad. Anyway, yeah, like this is the kind of thing where you go into combat, you've done the math in your head, you're like, okay, I should be able to kill this if I attack it with unit X, and unit X goes in there, they do their thing, and you're just shy like 2 or 3 points of damage. Well, it goes to their turn, and you're just like, Brass Skull Meteor, hit the panic button, and your problem just goes away.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's also important that happens. Like you roll 8 dice no matter what.
Yeah.
So really like it really is good to clean something up that you just miss killing the whole thing.
Yeah, because sometimes like that one unit can really set you back. Sometimes they can heal it, and it just creates all sorts of problems because if you don't finish it off, well, now it's attacking your unit, and your unit's at like partial strength, right? And like you just got to kill it, gotta get it out of there.
Yeah, I feel like this is really not as good to be using it against like just smaller units and things like that, right? Like unless you're using that to like wipe like the last 1 or 2 models out of a unit.
I mean, even against like a smaller hero, like doing like 2 to 3 mortal wounds is still really good. And sometimes that's what you need to finish a guy off, right? And you also have to think about this, like you're killing a model, so you're getting a blood type back too. So you shoot the unit for 3, you get 1 back, hopefully, right? That's the hope. So kind of costs 2 most of the time.
Interesting. I hadn't really actually thought about it that way. Interesting. All right, next, Apoplectic Frenzy. You can just pick one of your units to fight in the hero phase.
So this is cool because like pick a friendly unit to fight means that you get to pile in. So according to the rules, you can pile in when you pick a unit to fight. It piles in. So it's a little 3-inch move in addition. So that's sweet. So you kind of get to shuffle your guys around. Hopefully, get more models into melee combat if you need to. It's like better than Skull Meteor most of the time. Provided your unit's at a reasonable level of strength. One of the great things about this is your opponent can't buff their units with command abilities during the end of the hero phase, so they're not going to be able to like add +1 to their saves or anything like that. So you get a nice whack, if you will, while they're down.
Yeah. For 5, Rising Hatred, add 1 to Hatred of Sorcery rolls until the end of the battle. So situationally really good.
It's situational it's situationally good, but the likelihood of this is kind of a really I don't know
if like a deterrent against your opponent casting spells to begin with.
This is when like you really spike hard on the blood type points because your opponent casts some really aggressive spells, and you're like, you know what? Hatred of Sorcery. Now I'm gonna get them faster. Let's go. So it definitely puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, but I have a feeling that like there are better uses for your blood type points most of the time. It's gonna be very rare that you want to use this, but I can see it.
All right, heads must roll for 6 points. You improve the Ren characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Blades of Khorne units by 1 until the end of the turn.
I don't even know why you would use this. For 6.
I think it's like it's going to depend on, again, it's situational. I think there's definitely times where that could be useful. I mean, board wide, improve Ren by 1 is pretty powerful.
But the issue here is not that it's not powerful. The issue here is that like you're choosing to do this for 6 points over all of these other abilities that you have, whether it be summoning, I mean, whether it be there's just a lot you could do instead of improving your Ren by 1. And you're gonna see like there are other ways to improve your Rend in this army. I mean, it's not like this is the only way to improve Rend. Completely negating an opponent's save, it's kind of overkill, I think. And it just seems like there's almost always a better thing to do than improve your Rend by 1 in this book, at least for 6 blood hit points.
Yeah. All right, for 7, let the blood flow. You roll 1 die for each enemy unit on the battlefield that is within 3 inches of any friendly Blades of Khorne units. On a 2-up, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Again, situational. Like, I feel like for 7 blood tithe, like, I guess like the easy comparison in my head is like, how often are you gonna get more value out of let the blood flow than you are out of a brass skull meteor?
So the issue with this is by the time you've got 7 blood tithe points, how many units do you think are like left
Yeah.
on the battlefield? Like whether it be yours or your opponents, and you're gonna do D3 damage to what? What are you gonna do? And then like there shouldn't even be a roll here. It should just be they all suffer D3. But even if they did that, I probably wouldn't use this ability.
Yeah. I think there's definitely corner cases when like you just have like everything on the board in combat everywhere and you have blood tithe coming out of your ears and you just want to like just make this happen. Especially my thought too is like, if you're doing like some kind of like weird multiplayer game or something like that, where you just have blood tithe everywhere and it's not even necessarily involving you.
You know what? I agree with that. I think for narrative purposes, I think this ability is really fun.
Yeah. For narrative, it's great. For larger battles, it's great. For your standard 2,000 point match play, it's like, there's probably some better choices here a lot of the time. But like, if you're thinking outside of that box, you can do some interesting things with this. There's definitely some possibilities.
Yeah, I can. All right, I can see it in that case, like larger battles that are beyond the scope of match play.
Yeah.
But again, like for the purposes of match play, I really don't see somebody using this unless they're just doing something silly. Like this is just silly. There's better stuff to do in this book with 7 blood type.
Yeah. And then 8, we have Slaughter Triumphant. You add 1 to the attacks characteristics of melee weapons used by friendly Blades of Khorne units until the end of the battle. Like, okay. Like, first of all, like, this should just have, like, Kimminess required written right next to it. Like, they put, like that there are going to be people rocking up to the table with doing this as many times as possible in mind, because that's just what they want to do.
It's so hard to get to 8, though. Like, it's pretty hard to get to 8 blood type points, like, before turn 3, right? Like, you get to the end of turn 3, you might have 8. It's very rare that you have this many blood type points. And if you do have this many, like, and you're in an army that can utilize this, it means you have a lot of models. Because like running like something like Bloodthirsters, for example, you're not going to see a lot of benefit from this ability because the volume of attacks is greatly reduced. So like you'll see this being very good in like a Bloodletter list or or like a mortals list where you have lots of miniatures on the table. And even in those cases, like the summoning table is so much more appealing because you are going to get a lot more attacks from the summoning table. And they're probably higher quality as well on average.
Yeah. The other consideration that I would have for that, though, is there's a lot of things out there that have multiple attack profiles, and each melee attack is getting +1. So if you're running Blood Crushers or Skull Crushers, those are getting +2 attacks per model, and their hoof attacks are not a joke either.
That's true, but most of the units in this book are just single attack profile. That's it.
Yeah.
At least melee, because this is just melee.
Yeah. I mean, this is like my line of thinking here, though, is like, there's going to be people that want to build around this because it's cool, and like okay, like we're gonna milk this stone here. How do we do that? like okay,
how do you get as many as possible?
We're gonna run a lot of Blood Crushers because Blood Crushers are more fun because they do mortal wounds, and we're gonna do more mortal wounds. Yeah, I don't know. I think it has a place, but I don't know if like it's the competitive choice.
No, if you want to milk that to death, I think you just want to run lots of Blood Reavers.
Yeah,
probably like lots of Blood Reavers because they're just the highest attack volume per point.
Mm-hmm. All right, over to summoning. 10 points will get you any of the 3 Bloodthirsters. 8 points for 20 Bloodletters.
Yeah.
6 points for 10 Fleshhounds. 5 points for 10 Bloodletters.
Yeah. 10 Bloodletters is good now.
5 points for 3 Blood Crushers.
They're actually good now.
Yeah. 5 for Skull Cannon.
Mm-hmm.
5 for a Herald on a Blood Throne. 4 for a Skullmaster, and then 3 each for 5 Fleshhounds and 1 Bloodmaster.
Can I make this really easy in terms of like in terms of power level and what you would do in the game? Like the Bloodthirsters, they're a total waste of 10 points. I will just tell you right now, 8 points for a Bloodletter host. When you can get 20 Bloodletters, I mean, that's an insane amount of damage capacity. It's 40 wounds. I mean, 20 Bloodletters is bonkers. It's so good. And then to say you have to spend 2 more for a unit that's a lot less powerful, Bloodthirsters are not as good as 20 Bloodletters.
Yeah.
At least not in staying power, damage. I mean, across the board. I really don't know why those are pointed that way. I mean, you're summoning a Bloodthirster for fun, I think, because it's a Bloodthirster and Bloodthirsters are cool.
Yeah.
But the Bloodletters are probably like one of the highest damage, like good number of wounds for the points. I mean, they're just an all-around great unit now.
Yeah.
And at 8, like that's a big win. 20 bodies, holding objectives, doing damage, high bravery. There's a lot you can do with 20 Bloodletters. And a Bloodthirster, they're cool. Don't get me wrong, but not as cool for 10 points. Fleshhounds are really sweet now. They get +2 their charge, so they're great when you summon them in at 9. 7-inch charge, and rerollable. Let's go.
Yeah.
So they still have high attack volume. They're not as high damage, but they can take out like a reasonable battle line unit. Sometimes they're exactly what you want. A unit of 10 Bloodletters, again, really strong. Not as points efficient as 8 for 20, but really strong choice. Blood Crushers, also really strong choice. They have a 3-up save now. They do reasonable damage on the charge, as well as while in combat. Not as much as 10 Bloodletters, but they're a little tankier, and maybe they'll get you there in a way that just 10 Bloodletters won't. Situational, right?
Yeah.
Skull Cannon's way better than it was. Blood Throne's way better than it was. It's also a priest, so keep in mind when you summon those things, you get to pick a prayer from your prayer table. That's a huge bonus on the Blood Throne, especially if you're running out of heroes, you're running out of priests, whatever. Skullmaster's not so good. He's not a priest, so huge disappointment for him. But it makes sense. You can still it's only when you summon him too. You can give him an artifact if you really want to make him a priest. Fleshhounds with 5 models, nice cheap bodies. Again, they can make a charge. They got high volume attacks, good against low saves. And Bloodmaster, Herald of Khorne, probably one of the best summonable units in the game. At only 3, he's a huge bargain. He's also a priest, so get that extra priest. If you got the enhancement to gain extra prayers, you get to pick 2 chip prayers on your table. Of course, you can only cast 1 or use 1. So that's my rundown of that list. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this, but I think every single thing on this list is pretty good, except for the Bloodthirsters and the Skullmaster Herald of Khorne.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna end up revisiting this every time we hit a demon unit. But definitely good to keep that in mind going forward. I definitely just love that you can use the same resource for either special abilities or for summoning in this book.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, it just gives you more options, more decisions, a bigger toolbox to work with. You just use whatever you need in that given situation.
Yeah, you definitely want to think ahead. You want to think about what you can kill. You want to think about what you can achieve, and what's best for you at any given moment of time. I typically, when I'm playing, I actually shy away from the summonable units because, in most cases, I have experienced it's been better to use the abilities. However, that said, I have had a few situations where someone casts a spell and I just kind of explode, and it just makes sense to place a big unit on the battlefield and really apply more pressure and capture more objectives.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a very nice feature of this army to me, specifically, is just that kind of flexibility that's available, that this whole ability creates.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's definitely a toolbox, and you're kind of like picking things out that you need at that moment in time, or just hopefully not playing on your back foot, but like pulling tricks out of your hat to catch up if you're losing and hopefully win.
And it's also like a win for losing sort of an ability where like you're like, yeah, like one of your things dies, but yeah, I do get a blood type point and I can do stuff with that.
Yeah.
It makes losing feel a little bit better.
And I also think that these points are a little. I think that GW factors this into the points of our units.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that going on too.
Yeah. All right. Enhancements. Let's start with the command traits. Embodiment of Wrath. At the start of your hero phase, roll a die for each friendly bloodletter host wholly within 18 inches of the general. On a 2+, you can return D3 slain models to that unit.
So it's 16.
Yeah.
I know it's tough to read there, but it is 16. Everything is multiples of 8, which is kind of cool. But yeah, good ability. I think it's fine. Bloodletters are hardy now, and you can return models. It's fine. It's a good ability. If you want to play that way. I've seen people successful with it.
Yeah. All right. Favorite of Khorne. The general has this command trait. You begin the battle round. Begin the battle with 1 blood tithe point.
You know, a lot of people are kind of criticizing this, but you know, I can tell you that there have been many times where you know you roll and you're going to see the prayers that we have, and you roll and you don't get that extra blood tithe point in the beginning, and so you have 0 going into your opponent's turn or going into the end of your own turn, and it's kind of a big deal. And you know, maybe this ability does have some merit. You know, you could also think of it as like granting yourself access to moving 3 units d6 inches, right? Guaranteed. Or being able to generate a blood type point and counter a spell on your opponent's turn for free. I think it's a good ability, but you know, is it better than the rest? I guess it just depends on how you use it.
Yeah. If you're all about that Alpha Strike life, this is for you.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, Firebrand. The general becomes a priest, and he's already a priest. He knows 1 additional prayer. All of these, by the way, these are for demons that we've gone over so far. So it's very important to have that differentiation.
I think Firebrand is probably the most popular artifact, and for good reason. Our prayers are very good, and they're very powerful force multipliers. And this allows 1 unit that wouldn't normally be a priest, meaning the Skullmaster, the guy on the Blood Crusher, or the Juggernaut, the Bloodletter, and or a Bloodthirster, to be a priest, and that's quite good.
Yeah, definitely solid. All right, so up next we have Unrelenting Hunter. At the end of the combat phase, if this general fought in the combat phase and is within 3 inches of enemy units, this general can make a pile-in move. Alternatively, at the end of the combat phase, if this general fought in the combat phase and is more than 3 inches from all enemy units, this general can make a normal move or attempt a charge.
You know, I think that I can see uses for this. It's quite strong, especially like in an objective-based game where you're just trying to get into your opponent's territory or position yourself. The fact that you can make a normal move or attempt a charge means you can really go anywhere, especially if the unit is dead.
This gives you like that opportunity to get aggressive with your general and then reposition after the combat if you wipe the enemy unit out.
The problem is that like the demon heroes and the bloodthirsters aren't necessarily as killy as they used to be.
Yeah.
So I'm just not sure if this ability is better than I think it's more situational than the rest of the abilities, and that's why it'll see less use. I think hands down the winner out of all these is Firebrand. I think you're going to see that the most, followed by Embodiment of Wrath, Favorite of Khorne, and then Unrelenting Hunter.
Yeah. I feel like all of these do have like a solid place, though. I don't look at any of these and say like, "Oh, this is useless." I don't see where. Well, I don't know why they even made this thing. Why would someone want this? It's all of these things have something for somebody, and it's just a matter of like what your priorities are. And
none of these are bad. They're all reasonably good. I can see places for them, but some are definitely, they shine more than others. Put it that way.
Yeah. All right, over to the mortal side of things. We have Diabolic Purpose. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of attacks made by this general that target an enemy hero. That would have been great if that sentence ended at general. But they continued, and it suddenly started to feel bad.
I don't even think it would have been that great if it said target. If even if they remove that last portion, I don't think it would be that great. We already do enough damage. I don't think damage is the issue, especially like when you kind of want to, you kind of don't want to constantly engage your heroes. You want them to be alive typically. Um,
Yeah.
it, I don't know. It just seems like there are other abilities that I would rather have.
Yeah, that's fair. For me personally, I just
And
get an irrational amount of joy out of building like weird killy heroes.
by the way,
So
this is just Bloodbound stuff as
yeah,
well. So like keep in mind, like these are all foot heroes you're adding 1 damage to. And so like throwing them into combat, well, unless you take the Juggerlord, then of course
yeah,
he's very good. But adding 1 damage to one of these foot heroes is not quite as good as say adding this to a Bloodthirster, right?
yeah, that is. Yeah, your talent pool is a little shallow for this.
Right.
All right, Barbarian Lord, add 1 to run and charge rolls for this general, and for friendly Blood Reavers, Claws of Karnak, and Fleshhound units while they are wholly within 16 inches of this general.
I can see it.
Yeah, it seems like there's the thing, especially for this, that I like is that is the flesh hounds. That the flesh hounds already have that +2 to charge, so this puts them on +3 to charge.
Yeah, so
So
you could summon them.
yeah,
Yeah.
it makes them a really good unit to summon in, and just maybe they're not necessarily like the killiest things in the world, but they're there's still point of summoning things and getting them into combat, even if it's not to just obliterate the thing that you're charging into.
Yeah, you can kind of confirm the engagement. I think Blood Reavers also have a built-in +1 to charge, so it helps them uh, make charges. I think they're probably the better one. Yeah, add 1 to charge rolls if this unit has any hornblowers. So yeah, Blood Reavers are probably like the better target here. I don't know if Claws of Karanek has a bonus to charge because they're the new unit, and I've been trying to like theory craft with them for a little while. No, they don't have +1 to charge rolls, but it's a nice bonus. If you're running Blood Reavers or Claws of Karanek or Fleshhounds or summoning Fleshhounds, but the Blood Reavers are actually pretty decent for their points, and
Yeah.
um, especially in well, there's a couple of ways you can take Blood Reavers and make them really strong. So yeah, I mean maybe this is really good in some lists that like run these cheaper units.
Yeah. All
And
right. Up next, Lord of the Gore Chosen. Add 1 to the attacks characteristics of melee weapons used by friendly Gore Chosen units while they are wholly within 16 inches of this general.
so I have used this, and it's actually quite good. It's better than people realize. Is it like the only thing to take? No, absolutely not. And I will explain later why I use it. But it's actually better than it looks because the Gore Chosen units have a decent attack profile. A lot of them do,
Yeah.
as you'll see later, and it's really not that restrictive. Both of the Barbarian Lord and Lord of Gore Chosen, wholly within 16 is quite easy to do. It's how the Blood Secretor worked previously.
Yeah.
And so, most of the time, if this is in your list and it's not removed from the battlefield yet, you're gaining this ability, which is really cool.
Yeah. So, what units, just quick rundown, have that keyword?
Gore Chosen,
Yeah.
Gore Chosen are all the priests in the mortal side of the book.
Okay.
Um, the aspiring Deathbringer, Blood Secretor. Um, let's see, Exalted Deathbringer, Skull Grinder. It's all your foot heroes that aren't lords, basically.
Okay. But there's no other units that have that keyword.
No, they're all heroes. So typically, like the way I would run this is like I have my list where it's the Bloodstoker. I've got 3 priests in the Bloodsecrator, and the Lord of Khorne on a Juggernaut is my general, and he has the Lord of the Gore Chosen. He's pretty hard to kill, so he's effectively granting all these characters +1 attack, and their attack profiles are pretty good. So that's 5 additional attacks, and I'll run Skull Fiends typically if I do that. So that way, when I make charges, they'll always attack first, and so they take good advantage of Lord of the Gore Chosen.
Yeah.
But outside of something like that, I don't know that you'd want to get your priests into combat, because you are taking a significant risk. They don't have a high save, and if they're not attacking first and they don't get that damage in, then they're probably going to die. So you really won't get to take advantage of Lord of the Gore Chosen in that case. So it's a situational command trait.
Yeah. Cool. And then High Priest of Khorne can only go on a priest. In each of your hero phases, the general can chant 2 prayers that they know instead of 1.
I think this is going to be really popular if you're playing an all mortals list. Prayers are very strong, and you'll want to chant 2 sometimes, and you can't. So you'll take this. The only crappy thing about this is they have to be your general. Just like your priests are not that hardy, if you will. So, but they are all Galatian veterans.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, that's relevant for another month or 2.
At least the mortals. Yeah, exactly.
All right, and over to artifacts for the demons. Trying to get paint out of this dropper, and it is all clogged on me. All right, so we have Mark of the Blood Reaper, 4-up ward against mortal wounds. Definitely just solid in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay. The thing is, like, I think it's good. I don't know how else to put it, but you gotta remember, you're putting this on a hero. Typically they're either going to be a bloodthirster in this case, so they're going to have 16 wounds on a 4-up save, or they're going to be a foot hero, or they're going to be a bloodthrower, right? So they're sub 10 wounds, and are you dying mostly from mortal wounds? It's probably not. You're probably dying from things with rend. So it's situational. And then most of the time, if you're dying from things that are ranged, you've got your 5-up ward built in.
Yeah.
Specifically your heroes, because you're protecting your heroes. So usually behind your front line. I don't know. I think this ability is not as good as the others, put it that way.
All right. Next we have Argath, the King's Blade. The King of Blades, much like the King of Fears. So that's giving you ward rolls cannot be made for enemy models while they are within 3 inches of the bearer. That is very, very situational.
You would think
you'll cripple Nurgle with that, and then there's some armies that is not going to do a damn thing.
You're right, all right. But the thing is like, there are way more armies now that have word saves than armies that don't. So like, there are often very annoying units with like a weird 4-up ward, or a word against mortals, like the Epitome. Like, there's a 2-up word against mortals, or like the Stormcast, the Celestin drops out of the sky and he's got a 4-up ward. Or there are so many units that just have these weirdly high word saves in addition to the regular saves that maybe aren't so high. And this gets around a lot of that. And while you say that this is situational, I think that this is like, it's potentially my top pick in this list. I think it's that good. Because
Really?
because there's the problem is that there are too many situations where like there's a single unit that you just can't reliably kill because they have a weird word save. And so this is the tool that helps you break that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, there's a lot of circumstances that, more casual players, or even just, anybody having a casual game, that you get into, you're going to have a game and it's with, your friend that plays Nurgle all the time. And it's like, okay, well, I take this and this is going to be really good against in this particular game.
That's horrible. Yeah, you
You
could.
know that's going to happen.
Of course it's going to, but I think this is better than just fighting against Nurgle. Obviously, it's really good against Nurgle, no question. But it's also good, I think, against, there's so many Stormcast armies that it's good against. It's good against all the Death armies because it just completely negates their save, their ward
Yeah.
save. It's good against to OBR with their like potential 5-up wards. It's good against, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many armies with word saves that this is just a great ability now. It's greater than it ever was, put it that way.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, Slanesh. Slanesh is full of 5-up words, just completely full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Halo of Blood. The bearer has first strike.
It's a fun, aggressive ability that everybody will always use.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, it's definitely solid. It definitely would also make those bloodthirsters a little bit more durable, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the kind of ability you may see in a Bloodthirster list to have this kind of like rapid fire attacks. So, like as you'll see later on, there's some abilities to the Bloodthirster. So like attacking first, it has benefits.
Yes.
But yeah, I think this is the kind of fun artifact that you'll often see players take that just want to do more damage. This is an ability that helps you do more damage.
Yep. All right, and Skull Shard Mantle, add 2 to Hatred of Sorcery rolls for the bearer.
We're going to have to see some very serious changes in the meta before this is good.
Yeah, like very situational, right? Like
extremely, because like the problem is like they just won't target that unit.
Yeah, like you have to like combine that with I'm putting this artifact on something that my opponent absolutely has to kill, and his best or only way of killing that thing is magic.
Yeah, and not only that, there's really no one unit that you're like, I have to kill that in a Khorne army. Everything's kind of just like working together, and we get less and less powerful as our things die, but we also gain blood types. I don't know if you'll ever have that.
Yeah. All right, and then we've got the mortal ones. So the blood rune at the end of the combat phase, if any wounds caused by attacks made by melee weapons with the bearer are allocated to a hero or monster and not negated, you receive a blood tithe point.
It's cool.
Yeah, you can just if you have like a durable hero, you can turn him like into a blood tithe farm, I guess.
Yeah, he's pretty neat. Get in there, give me a blood tithe point. I don't think it's as good as some of the other things on this list, but it's fun.
Yeah. All right. Banner of Blood only goes on a Blood Secretor. You can reroll charge rolls for friendly Blades of Khorne units wholly within 16 inches of the bearer.
I think this is insane in one of the sub factions, but like this is just as insanely powerful ability. It's not very restrictive either because 16 inches is pretty big.
Yeah, that was basically my read on it too. Was like, there's just so many things that you can throw this at, and it'll be good. or so many like lists and situations you can throw this at. So I'm I'm a fan of this, and you're going to be so frequently running blood secretors anyway, because those things are just they've always been good, and now they're different than they used to be, and they're still good.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a really strong ability. It's very clear though that the demons have the demons have better artifacts, but like it's almost like you're playing with what you have, right? And like what's good is relative to what you have, and I think this is just it's good relative to what you have.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Crimson Plate Bearer has a 5-up ward. I mean, that would be good if it could go on a Bloodthirster, but our biggest mortal hero that can take an artifact is what, like 8 wounds?
Yeah, but he also has a 2-up save, so it's actually this is deceptively powerful.
Yeah.
Lord of Khorne on a Juggernaut is quite tanky, and when you give him a 5-up ward, he's super hard to kill. I think I played like 6 or 7 games with this book, and in all the games that I've taken him, I think I've taken him 5 times. I think he died once because that 5-up ward is just it really takes him over the top. You go from trying to get through a 2-up, 5-up, and then on top of that, he ignores spells on a 5-up. It's just super strong.
Yeah.
But it again, like obviously not as good as some of these demon ones, but it's deceptively strong.
All right. And then finally, we have the Gore Cleaver. Pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. Improve the Ren characteristic by 1. In addition, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with that melee weapon is a 6, that attack causes 1 mortal wound to the target in addition to any damage it inflicts. Now, I like artifacts like that because I like making silly, killy heroes. I don't know how good that is, but if your goal is to actually try and create those melee assassin heroes that kind of don't exist in this game, this would be a go-to for that.
I don't think Khorne is a very good faction for creating melee assassins outside of Korgus Call. But I think this is rough simply because it's only one of the melee weapons, and
Yeah.
the highest number of attacks on any single melee unit that could take this.
Not a lot.
I think it's 5 is the most. So maybe you'll get a mortal wound.
Yeah,
if your hero doesn't die before you get 6. Sorry, Lord of Khorne on Juggernaut 6. So maybe you'll get a mortal wound out of it, but I guess improving the Ren characteristic is nice. I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it has a place, it has a purpose, but might not be the purpose for us. We may not be that audience.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is it for artifacts. Let's move on to other enhancements. The bell of the ball in this book, the prayer scriptures. All of these, unless otherwise stated, are chanted on. Oh, wait, no, I'm wrong. Some are 3, some are 4. Looks like they're actually fairly evenly split. I'm just going to shut up now and move on. Blood sacrifice, answer value 4, range of 8. Pick 1 friendly Blades of Khorne hero wholly within range and visible to the chanter. The unit suffers D3 mortal wounds and you receive a blood tithe point.
Very good.
Yeah.
Blood tithe points are good. Give me more blood tithe points. They let me do things.
Yeah. And then you have those awesome occasions when you do this to get a blood tithe point, and then you kill the unit and get another blood tithe point.
Well, you're also going to pick your demon units a lot for this and hope to ignore the mortal wounds on a 5-up.
Yeah. Unless there is an FAQ or errata about that eventually.
I don't think there will be. I really don't think that it's overtly strong that you can do that. But it's just a nice bonus. It's like, okay, maybe I can ignore some of these mortal wounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bloodbind, answer 3, range 16. Pick an enemy within range and more than 3 inches from all friendly units. Your opponent must make a move up to 8 inches with that unit. All of the models in that unit must finish that move as close as possible to the chanter and finish that move within 3 inches of your army. And
This
can finish that move within 3 inches of your army.
this is quite possibly the most powerful prayer.
Yeah, like that is just so powerful. Like
This
you
is
just make your opponent come closer to you, and they don't have any choice in the matter. Like,
well, it's even more than that. So like often you're going to find yourself well, especially so. All right, there's a. Let's go to Killer Instinct before I talk about this. So Killer Instinct is also a prayer. Allows you to make a free move with one unit.
yep.
That's not in combat, right? So typically, what I'm finding myself doing is I'm trying to Killer Instinct the priest forward and then drag an enemy unit towards me at 8 inches. Sometimes dragging them to combat with that priest so they can't retreat with reposition.
Mhm.
It'll typically take your opponent's unit out of any auras that they control.
Ooh.
So that's pretty good. Sometimes it just sometimes it opens the gates, if you will. Like maybe there's a screen in the way and you want to get that screen out of the way. So you just pull them towards you and then move around them and then charge your opponent, you know.
Yeah.
And
You
all the
also
models have
pull enemy units off of objectives too.
pull them
Without
off of
having to fight them.
objectives. Yeah. So this ability is so good. Like if there's anything that I think that wins me the games the most, in this book, I think I'm gonna say it's Bloodbind. Bloodbind wins the most games.
Yep.
Period. Like
I can see it.
everyone's caught up in like one blood tithe point for move pick 3 units, but Bloodbind is is gross. This ability is so strong. Like I don't even know how else to say it. So A
Yeah.
plus plus.
And I think there's going to be a lot of occasions where you're going to just kind of get away with doing something stupid with this, especially early in a game. And, maybe again later in the game, if your opponent's not thinking about it enough, where they just kind of like let you do something really powerful with this that they probably could have stopped but didn't.
Yeah. So if, for example, so think of occasions where you're fighting like ranged units, and you go, okay, well, I'm going to move this priest. There, I think it's a 6-inch move on the slaughter priest. Let me just double check that real quick. Yes, no, 5-inch move on the slaughter priest. So I'm going to move my priest 5 inches, and then I'm going to target your unit, and move you 8 inches, right? So if you're like somewhere between 12 and 13, I can effectively get you. So I'm not doing the math right. If you're within 17 inches, I can pull you into combat with that priest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially if you're fighting ranged units, if you pull them into combat with your priest, they can't overwatch you and things like that. There's so much utility wrapped in this. Or, for example, maybe they have a ranged unit behind the unit you want to kill, and they're going to overwatch you when you charge it. You're pulling them out of all these auras, these very potent auras, and you're opening the doors. You're moving things off objectives. You're making your opponent very vulnerable by adjusting their unit positioning, and quite frankly, it might be, I think, it might be the most powerful ability in the whole book.
Yeah, very good. All right. One of the obvious winners, Bronze Flash, goes off on a 3, and it's +1 to save for a unit within 16.
This is our Mystic Shield. It's good.
Yeah.
it's just as good as Mr. Shield.
Yep. The only thing to me is that, like, Mystic Shield, you just like every wizard just gets that. In this, you have to like spend a prayer slot on it.
I mean, certainly, but at the same time, it's like, this is what we get.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's really good. It's not very interactable for your opponent. I mean, certainly we have to roll for it. We get rerollable 3-up in most cases, but it's also 1 unit. So I'm actually finding that in many cases I'm not using this prayer unless. So I typically take the enhancement that gives you multiple prayers because it's quite good, and it allows me to. Mystic Shield is not limited to Holy Within 12 in. Well, yeah, you're right. It's not limited to Holy Within. But like typically, I'm taking multiple prayers, so that way I can have like kind of a defensive set of prayers as well as an aggressive stance. And I think that like a lot of players are doing that as well. And so like you're going to see a lot of people that have things like Curse, Bloodbind, Killer Instinct as more of like an aggressive style, and sometimes Unholy Flames, and then Bronze Flesh, Killer Instinct, Blood Sacrifice, Bloodbind stuff as like a defensive array of prayers.
Here. Holy crap! I just had like pulled up a model and like the base just like melted. Something must have spilled on it.
Oof.
I can't figure out what it was. This is like, wow, holy shit. Okay, I gotta figure out what the hell to do about that. Anyway, moving along, Unholy Flames, answer value 4, range 16, pick a friendly unit. And until the start of your next hero phase, improve the Ren characteristic by 1.
Okay. I'm finding this is good, but it's not as good as you think.
Yeah. It seems like yes, this is good.
Yeah.
There are other prayers that I probably would rather have though.
But don't underestimate this. Like it's a tool in the toolbox. Sometimes you're playing against somebody with higher end units, but most of the time I'm finding this prayer is making me do more damage than I need. The times I'm finding that it's actually it's actually really good are when I'm fighting like OCR Bone Reapers, where like they have just incredibly tanky, powerful units, and you need to do as much damage as possible. Then I think that like an Unholy Flames is quite good, but outside of that, I almost want to try and curse the enemy unit and like throw something that doesn't proc mortal wounds on 6s and just like engage multiple. I don't know. Unholy Flames is really good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But like it's definitely more situational than people realize. I didn't think we missed Killer Instinct. I know I briefly mentioned it, but again, it is almost as good as Bloodbind. Bloodbind and Killer Instinct combined are like S tier ultimate superpower abilities. Like it is insane when those go off together. Pick a unit within 16, 3-up rerollable within your terrain. That unit can make a free move as long as it's not in combat. Anyway, that's Killer Instinct. We can all figure out why that's good. It's free movement, good movement.
Free movement, good.
Yeah, exactly. Witchbane Curse, however, I think it's probably the weakest prayer, but it's still okay.
So that is answer value of 4. Pick an enemy wizard visible to the chanter. There is no range on that.
Right.
Until the start of your next hero phase, subtract 1 from casting rolls for that unit. In addition, until the start of your next hero phase, each time the unit attempts to cast a spell and the spell is not successfully cast, that unit takes D3 mortal wounds.
It's good, right? But it's super situational.
yeah, like it's one of those things where, like, again, if you're like one, it could just be meta dependent. Like if magic is that prevalent in games, then that could be a really good choice. Alternatively, if you just know or think you have a really good idea of what your buddy is going to be playing when you get together for a game this week, could
You could cheese them.
you just cheese them.
You could
You
cheese
know?
them. But I wouldn't recommend taking that to a tournament.
Yeah, how often though I see like in Facebook groups, um, people asking a question like, "Oh, I've got a game coming up against X army. Like, what do you guys recommend for that?" Like, this actually is a thing that a lot of people are thinking about. I think that's like kind of an underserved aspect of the community is the people that are like that know that like the one matchup that they have that they're building a list for, right? Like they're not just building a list for all comers, they're building a list tailored against a specific opponent.
I mean, if you're doing that and you want to build the anti-magic army against your poor friend who's playing the magical Seraphim list, then there's plenty of options.
If your opponent claims to be your friend and is bringing tech lists, then first of all, they're not your friend, and number two, they can fuck right off and take his 20 years with him.
Well, I'm not sure the tech list would be impacted very much by Witchbane Curse.
Whatever. Still, fuck tech list.
All right. Fuck tech list.
Yeah. Elves are the worst.
They're nasty. Worse than dwarves.
Elves, bad people. That's who. All right. What is next? That is everything on here.
Slaughter hosts.
Slaughter hosts. You want to take us through these bad boys?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a lowdown. Yeah. So, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong in chat, but so far I've seen 4 out of 5 of these slaughter hosts go 5-0 in like the last 2 weeks. They're all good. I think they're all great. I think Baleful Lord's probably the weakest one. I haven't seen the Flayed go 5-0. They may have, but I just maybe missed it. But I still think the Flayed is actually quite good. So I don't like count that out. I just think Baleful Lords is absolutely the weakest of all of them. And I will explain why. I flat out just think if you're running Baleful Lords, you would probably rather run Reapers of Vengeance. That's the problem with Baleful Lords. Anyway, Reapers of Vengeance is add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Reapers of Vengeance demons. So this is just a demon one that target any enemy hero. You're often targeting enemy heroes, so you're often just getting +1 to hit. And in addition, you get an additional blood tithe point. Great. That's really good with all your demons. Blood tithe points are good. +1 to hit is good. That's great, especially against armies that are like giants, just big monster style monster mash armies. That's really good. And that's also, I don't know, it's just better than Baleful Lords. And I'll go to Baleful Lords next. Just skip over Blood Lords for now. Baleful Lords is whenever a friendly Baleful Lords Bloodthirster, other than Scarbrand, because you want Scarbrand on his bottom profile, is wholly within 8 inches of another Bloodthirster, other than Scarbrand. Use the top row of its damage table, regardless of how many wounds it has suffered. So that means you continue to move as fast as you did in bracket 1. It means you do as much damage as in bracket 1. Your Bloodthirsters always run on a full power until they're dead, or the last one is standing, right? Sounds good, but it's not. It's not as good as Reapers of Vengeance. It's just the way it is. I don't know how else to explain it. Bloodlords is. Go ahead.
Just my initial take on all of these. Just a little quick aside. these all seem very, very narrow and simple.
Well, Reaper's of Vengeance isn't that narrow, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, like what it does though, like it's
yes.
only giving you buffs against heroes.
Yes, it's only giving you buffs against heroes. That's correct. But we fight heroes every time we play Age of Sigmar, so it's not that situational. It's just situational within the context of each individual battle round. You're always going to fight some heroes.
Yeah, I'm not saying situational. I'm just saying like narrow, and there's just not like they're very tailored to one thing.
So Reapers of Vengeance, I don't think is that narrow, but Bloodlords is a great example of what you're saying. So it's extremely narrow, but at the same time, there are a lot of units that it impacts. So Decapitating Blow ability for Bloodlord Bloodletters. Get mortal wounds to go off on a 5-up instead of a 6. So you get +1 to your Decapitating Blow ability. That's pretty damn strong. It's going to happen twice as often.
That is just outrageously strong. Remember back in the day when you gave your Bloodletters +1 to hit? They did them on 5s.
And I'm telling you, like, this enables so many avenues of play for Bloodletters. This makes them really strong. And so you're absolutely going to see some people that used to play with Bloodletters and are finally like, yes, I can play with Bloodletters again. These are good, and they can feel good bringing them to the table. I'm telling you right now, Blood Crushers are good. Skull Cannons are good. Bloodletters are good. Everything Bloodletter is good right now. It's all good. Except for maybe Bloodmaster. But even he can be good if you give him the artifact that makes him a priest.
Anyway. But every hero is good if you give him that artifact.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's Bloodlords is a great example of why that blade artifact that negates ward saves is so good, because it effectively takes this thing and dials it up to 11. So we talked about Belflets. Let's go to Gortai. I will say that every single mortal faction is really good, and I think that a lot of players underestimate how good the mortals are. People just love the aesthetic of the Bloodletters. They love the aesthetic of the Bloodthirsters. They like the big things. They like the demons.
Cool. I'm the total opposite. I really like the mortal stuff a lot, and the demons just don't do quite as much for me.
I love the mortals as well. I love the demons too, but like, I'm not crazy about the big monster mash list, because like you said, I'm a Johnny. The monster mash lists are more of Timmy style play, big hit hard. But every single mortal faction has play. Absolutely. Gortide, I've seen lots of people play Gortide. It's not situational at all, and it's a very unique ability. So add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Gortide bloodbound units that target an enemy that is contesting an objective you do not control, or that target an enemy unit wholly within enemy territory. This is so often the case. So basically,
that's basically just like okay, all the time.
Whenever you're trying to take someone off their objective, you get +1 to wound. That's a huge boon. It's so hard to get +1 to wound in this game. The fact
that's
that it's
the thing
just,
that I quickly learned with the new Warriors of Chaos too. Like, they have a similar ability where they get +1 attack when they're near an opponent an enemy objective that you don't control, and like they might as well just have 3 attacks all the freaking time.
Yep. As long as you're the one pushing the envelope, you're getting +1 to wound. It's a very powerful ability, and like it is not as situational as it looks. So 2 thumbs up for Gortide. I think Gortide's really good. Skullfiend Tribe, also absurdly good. If you make an unmodified charge roll of an 8+ for a friendly Skull Tribe unit, the strike first effect applies until the end of turn. Now, this might not seem like it's overtly powerful at first, but when you consider the Blood Secretor's artifact to allow you to reroll all your charge rolls, this ends up being about a 66% chance of success. And if you're like repeatedly charging multiple units at your opponent, chances are if you charge 3 units at your opponent, 2 of them are going to strike first and 1 is going to strike normally. So guess what? That means every single one of your units is going to hit before your opponent gets to have a shot at combat, which is quite strong. So Skullfiend Tribe, really strong. This has been the faction that I've been playing with, but it does not mean that it's the only viable option because, like I said, there are players that have gone 5-0 with Gortide, 5-0 with Skullfiend Tribe, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Flayed had a pick where it went 5-0 at a game at a GT where it went 5-0 because it's quite good as well. Units have a 5-up ward if they have been picked to fight in the same phase. So meaning if I attack you, my unit now has a 5-up ward until the end of that phase. That makes your units incredibly hard to kill in combat specifically. But again, I think that this is probably best in a list where your units are relatively tanky. And the units in this army that are relatively tanky, I think either go better in Gortide or just don't do enough damage. So like Skull Crushers. And so maybe that's why you're not seeing this win enough. But I bet you somebody could win with this. I wouldn't be surprised. My top picks are Reapers of Vengeance, Bloodlords, Gortide, Skullfiend Tribe, the Flayed, and least favorite is Baleful Lords.
Yeah. I don't know. I look at these and they're basically all good, you know?
Yeah.
They all definitely have like uses. They all have gas in the tank.
Yeah, they all do something fun and useful. It's just like everything else. In terms of relative usefulness, like some are better than others.
Yeah. All right, and I think that is the end. Yep, that is the end of.
So, should we go over the grand strategies and battle tactics?
I guess if you want.
Yeah, sure. All right. So grand strategies.
I have those, so you will have to take the lead here.
That's fine. All the grand strategies are crap. The general grand strategies in the General's Handbook, they're just better. If you want to take one of the grand strategies out of this book for fun, go for it. Fine, go have your fun. But they're all extremely difficult. So if you can win a tournament with these grand strategies, you blood for the blood god, baby. But the battle tactics are really good. So blood for the altar is pick an enemy unit within 8 inches of your skull altar and kill it. It happens. It's good. Slay the sorcerer. Pick an enemy wizard on the battlefield. Kill it. It happens. There's wizards out there. You'll see one. You go, you know what? I'm going to kill that guy this round. Trial of Skulls. Pick one friendly unit. Complete this tactic if 8 or more enemy models are slain by attacks made by that unit during this turn. It's doable. You can do it. I've done it many times. It's good. No cowards among us. You complete this battle tactic at the end of the turn if all friendly Blades of Khorne units are within 8 inches of any enemy units. Is it possible? Yes. But it's a little bit hard.
Yeah.
Leave, because the thing is you have to not kill anything. Like it's really not something you want to do.
Yeah.
So kind of counterintuitive. Leave none standing. Pick one friendly unit within 3 inches of any enemy units. You complete this battle tactic if that unit fights in the combat phase of this turn, and at the end of that phase, there are no enemy units within 3 inches of that unit. Really difficult to pull off, but it's certainly possible in some cases. And then finally, the battlefield runs red. You complete this battle tactic if 4 or more units were destroyed during this turn. Possible, but very difficult. Core battalions. There's 1 core battalion. It's the Gore Chosen. And you have to take 5 Gore Chosen models in that battalion. You get an extra enhancement. And it's also a 1-drop deployment for those 5 heroes. It's actually quite good. I've seen many people use it with success. It does reduce your drops. When you're playing a mortal list, those 5 heroes are typically 5 individual drops. That fucking sucks. Sometimes, like, you just lose the deployment because of it. There's a lot of lists where, like, you can beat out the deployment and take advantage of your opponent in the deployment situation. So, really good battalion. Plus, it gives you an enhancement. It's very significant.
Yeah, I didn't realize that did both of those things. It's very good.
Yes, very strong. So let's talk about the first Bloodthirster. You want to talk about insensitive Bloodthirster?
Very highly insensitive.
Very insensitive.
He's going to talk to HR about what you said.
They're going to have a meeting with him.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. I'm not going to go too crazy on like all of the details of his profile. Big things here: 12-inch move, 16 wounds. If the unmodified, I can speak. I swear to God. If the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with the Great Axe of Khorne is a 6, the attack causes a number of mortal wounds to each enemy unit within 8 inches of this unit equal to the outrageous carnage value on the damage table, in addition to any damage that it inflicts. So that's throwing, at the top of the table, it's throwing 5 attacks. So, I mean, you'll probably trigger that once every time he attacks, right?
Not even.
Oh, wait, no, because it's on to wound, not to hit.
It's on wounds, yeah.
So that's...
Every other attack you'll trigger at once.
Yeah. Even less than that.
It's super swingy. This is the big Timmy hit you hard thirster. You know, sometimes it does really well. Sometimes it doesn't do so well.
This is the one everybody calls the boom thirster, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's a big boom. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you roll 2 6s. Sometimes you roll none.
Yeah.
He's good. He does good damage. He's got D3 plus 3 wounds.
Yeah.
There's not really much else to say. He's not a very good utility thirster. His sole focus is to do damage. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the Fury Thirster. You want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. This guy's the big winner in this book, I think. So the highlights here are his Beckon the Hunt. At the beginning of your charge phase, pick 1 friendly Blades of Khorne unit. This can be demons or mortals, so that's the big bonus. Wholly within 16, so again, not very restrictive. And the unit can't be a hero. So you can't do this with heroes, which, again, isn't too restrictive because a lot of your hammers in this army are large swaths of bloodletters or other things, right? So blood things. Until the end of the turn, that unit can attempt to charge within 18 inches of an enemy unit instead of 12, and it can roll 3d6. So this is a big winner. This kind of shores up the charge in a big way. And you can obviously combine this with command ability to reroll the charge because it's not a command ability. So
yeah.
Big win. This ability is very strong. And he's got a decent attack profile. He's also got this cool the land rebels ability. So basically where he's moving, the land becomes unstable and you subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units while they're within 8 inches of this big guy. Then in addition, at the end of the combat phase, you roll dice for each unit on a 4-up except for D3 mortal wounds. Those 2 abilities alone kind of make him worth taking. It's really
Yeah.
strong.
And then he does damage too.
Yeah, he reduces the damage of your opponent's units by cutting their hit rolls. He increases your damage by making sure you get into combat, and he can do some decent damage himself. So quite strong, very good.
Yeah, definitely seems to have some utility there.
Yeah, he's definitely the utility thirster. He's kind of the cross mortal demon thirster. He's the ambassador.
All right, our bad boy Scarbrand. He has that beautiful damage table where he gets better as he gets hit, which is just so fantastic, narratively speaking.
Yeah. His move never depreciates, but he can't fly. So that's the other big thing about him.
Yeah. Well, his wings are pretty fucked up. So we've seen some things.
Go ahead.
So he can he can do a ton of damage, but like just that the whole issue with like him being better at the lower end of his table, and like the only way he gets access to that is either by not being in combat for multiple turns or getting really badly damaged. Like I feel like it's weird. It's hard to actually get him to have that level of power.
Well, it's not as hard anymore because now it's unless this unit fought in both combat phases in the previous battle round. So previously, this force scroll was harder to engage at its best profile, but now that he has to engage in both combat rounds to kind of like soothe his anger, it's a lot harder to keep him from being angry after the first battle round.
Yeah.
So Scarbrand's is quite good. I don't think he does as much damage as he used to because you can't bump Carnage anymore. That you can't add additional attacks, but his damage is quite consistent. So if you want to do a reasonable amount of damage on a regular basis, Scarbrand's a great option. He's also a good option for an allyable unit out of the Khorne like roster into another army because he really doesn't benefit from our allegiance abilities the same way that all the other units do. He's not kind of like he's not beholden to those abilities to make him good.
Yeah,
he's
very much an independent operator.
Yeah, he's very much independent. Yep, you're right.
All right. Moving right along. Wrath of Khorne, Bloodthirster. What do you think on this guy?
I think he's a good kind of like demon-centric Bloodthirster. So this is the guy you will typically combo with your always attacks first ability if you're running a bunch of Bloodthirsters, and he's almost built around that concept in the sense that like he's got this Commander of Tyrants ability where in the combat phase after this is picked to fight for the first time, you can pick another Bloodthirster, not Scarbrand, wholly within 16 inches, and they can fight, but they can't fight again, right?
Yeah.
If he fights first, that means that other Bloodthirster gets to fight first as well, and then you can pick a third unit afterward. In addition, he's got this cool ability where he can issue a command without spending a command point once per turn. Doesn't have to be in any specific phase. He can just do it once per turn. Just gets a free command point.
Let me tell you from the experience of playing with Orgoth's Demon Spew, who is at almost the exact same points level as this guy, that is on its own insanely powerful.
Yeah, and the other thing is like I think this circumvents things like Total Eclipse. So like he can spend his command ability without spending any command points. So it doesn't cost 2, for example. So yeah, quite good. His range attacks are good. This guy is pretty good. I like the Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster. But again, he's more of a Bloodthirster centric Bloodthirster.
Yeah. All right. We don't need to talk about Archaon. He doesn't count as being in this book. Exalted Greater Demon of Khorne. Do we need to talk about that? No.
I don't want to talk about him.
Yeah. Skaraki's Forge World, right?
Yeah, forget Forge World models.
Keep
Keep going.
boy.
Look, is Vorgarath good? No. Could you run him? Yes. He does if you buff him up, he does around 40 something damage in an attack to a unit with a 3-up save. He passes the giant test just barely, but he's your whole army at that point. So if you lose him,
he's 3 times the points of a giant.
Yes. All right. So Aspiring Deathbringer. He's just an okay foot hero. I think there are better options in this book, but for his points, it's hard to beat at 80 points. 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 rend, 2 damage. It's not a bad profile for his points.
Is there any other war scroll in this game that is just a hero on foot and all he does is run up and hit things?
I don't think so. He's a 3-up save, 6 wounds. He's Gore Chosen. I can't say that I'd run him. I think you've got better options, but he's just funny.
He's
a
cool
funny
model.
guy.
I'm working on thinking him up. He's my possible test model for building an army. So he's a very cool model. I just think, why? Why are you doing this? Why have you done this Games Workshop? Oh, he's 80 points? Okay, I understand now.
Well,
he's a blood type point.
He's the kind of character. He's the kind of unit where, I almost don't want him to be considered a leader, but he takes up a hero slot. And the problem with this guy is that because he takes up a leader slot, Khorne is starved. The Khorne armies are starved for heroes in this game, unlike other armies. We not always, we will typically take 6 heroes. And because all our heroes are really good for their points, and we just want more. So he's the kind of unit that I almost wish that this wasn't a leader.
Yeah.
He's the Aspiring Deathbringer. He's not a Deathbringer yet.
Yeah. And for some reason, still better than the Exalted Deathbringer.
Right. So the Bloodmaster. So this is the
Demon Priest.
You see the Demon Priest. Yes. This guy's tops. So he's got an awesome prayer. Gives +1 to rune rolls for Blades of Khorne demon units. So again, +1 to wound is really hard to come by. This is a prayer. It's uninteractable. It's a 3-up rerollable, 16-inch range, but it's specific to demon units. So you have to pick an enemy unit, and then demon units can get +1 to wound against it. So you're picking the enemy unit in this case, so they have to be within 16 inches. You can't pick your own unit here.
I think you really hit the nail on the head too with one of the reasons why the prayers in general are so powerful. Because your opponent can't interact with them at all.
No.
You have a die roll and it's just a D6, so that's very random.
There are more priests though you're seeing in the game. I ran into a Fire Slayer's army in one of the RTT teams I went to. And he was trying to counter my prayers, and I was trying to counter his, but we just kept failing.
Definitely.
And they kept going off. But this guy is tops. If you're playing Khorne, you should absolutely pick up this unit. This is one of the best units in our army. If you're not playing him in your list, you're summoning him.
Yeah.
He's a Galatian veteran that you can summon that has prayers. You can replace your priests that die with him to keep casting your best prayers and keep your strategy going. And he only costs 3 blood type points to resummon, so quite strong. And he's got a reasonable attack profile. It's just a good all around unit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he has actually less than the standard five attacks, 3-up, 3-up, rend 1/2.
Yeah, but
That's our standard these days. So he's a little bit under that.
so you say that, but like the thing is, like Khorne has ways to improve your attacks, number of attacks, and
True.
just like any Khorne unit, like all of our stuff is slightly like slightly overcosted because we have so many buffs.
Yeah.
So
It's all about that synergy.
right,
The whole book is all about making stuff work together, and nothing is really just what it is on its own. It's always part of a greater whole.
exactly.
All
So what do
right.
we got?
The
Blood
Blood
Secretor.
Secretor, his
So
banner is completely different now.
he's, you know, a lot of people are like upset by this guy, but he's actually much better than he was. So once per battle, you say you're gonna plant this banner at the beginning of the combat phase. For that one combat phase, you get +1 to the attacks profile. Literally, whenever I played this army, like for the most part, it was only one combat phase that ever really mattered to get those attacks in. So
Yeah.
for the combat phase that matters, you plant your banner, you give your guys +1 attack. Boom, done.
Yep.
So quite good. Now, the real kicker on this guy though is again the artifact that lets you reroll all charge rolls within 16 inches. Huge
Yeah.
boon. He's also a totem, so he's much better for using command abilities than your standard heroes. He is a GB, quite good. He's got 6 wounds now instead of 5, I think. I think he only put 5. 3-up save, so he's a little tanky. He's faster. He used to be a 4-inch move. Now he's a 5, so he moves closer to the same speed as everyone else. And the big one is any Bloodbound unit with wounds 3 or less, you can return 1 Slade model to that unit on a 4+ instead of a 6 when you rally.
Yeah.
Super strong. And the reason this is, like, a lot of people are like, well, you know, talking to me about, you know, what is Khorne's best defense against magic, against shooting, against all this ranged shit. It's like Blood Secretor is one of those defenses. You know, shooting armies can shoot the hell out of you. And then if you have a rally on a 4+, it is absurd how much you can get back on a 4+ rally. And it's super swingy, but you know, I'm telling you, even with the nerf,
keep him alive too.
Say that again.
The trick is you have to just keep him alive too.
You do have to keep him alive, but like they have to have sharpshooters to really kill him.
In the current battle pack.
In the current battle pack, yes.
Yeah. So
he is really one of our major lines of defense against shooting.
Yeah. But without the Galatian champion rules, that might get to be a little bit more of a challenge. But the fact that he has
might be
3-up save and 6 wounds is definitely positive too, and he can benefit from Lookout Sir. So that's definitely a positive for him.
Yes. So then the other aspect is like GW hasn't quite done away with, for example, Galatian vets. So they may not completely do away with Galatian champions either, or Galatian sharpshooters for that matter. Like these may all just end up being things that are battalions going forward. And who knows? Who knows? I really like the design space that they've got going.
Yes, I agree.
Anyway, what's that?
Bloodstoker. Finally, Khorne gets run in charge. And I'm not sure how often you're even going to be taking this guy, even with that.
If you're taking mortals, you might want to consider him.
Yeah.
If you're taking a soup list, like where there's like a mix of demons and mortals, you might not have room for this guy. But he's definitely a unit that's great in a mortal-centric list. I've taken him many times, and he's been hit or miss because we have so much mobility that a lot of times run and charge isn't that great. But what this guy allows you to do is roll for D3 units, and you've got to think of them like this. Imagine if you could pick D3 units on the big Bloodthirster that gives you an additional D6 when you charge. Like this guy is kind of giving you an additional D6 because it's a
Right.
run and charge.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I
Yeah.
100% agree with you.
So he's still good, but
Yeah.
it's not. He's not mandatory because we have a ton of movement built into the army. He's kind of a budget unfettered fury thirster, like super low budget.
Yeah. He's in the low rent district.
Yeah.
You might have somebody selling crack next to him.
He's also a Gore Chosen, so he benefits doubly from Lord of the Gore Chosen because he's got 2 attack profiles.
Yeah. And they're not terrible attack profiles. They're all right.
No, most of our heroes do 2 damage and have some level of red.
Yeah. All right. Drom, the Wounder of Worlds. And this guy is part of that warband, right?
Yes. So the problem with Drom is I don't think he can take the Khorne prayers, but I don't know for sure if they fixed that.
Yeah. Did the FAQ for this book come out yet?
I might be wrong about that, but I think he's one of the weaker units in the army. He's one of the few units I'm not very excited about.
Yeah. That's
So
one of the challenges with all of these like Underworlds warbands that like have a hero in them. A lot of times it just feels like you're paying a lot of points for a hero because you're getting a couple of other models with it that you don't really want.
Yeah, he's 180 points.
Yeah.
And he comes with that Chosen of Drom unit.
Yeah.
Which
is just 2 dudes.
It's 2 dudes, but they get a 4-up ward if they're wholly within 3 inches of Drom.
Yeah, so they have to like hump him all the time.
It's like 8 wounds on a 5-up, 4-up.
Yeah. But Drom doesn't get that, right? It's the rest of the unit that does.
Yes. So yeah, Drom doesn't get that.
Yeah. Like if that ward situation was like the other way around, I'd like it a lot better.
So Droms, the Gore Chosen of Drom actually are kind of decent. So, but they're super situational here. They have 2 abilities. Throttle at the end of the combat phase. If this unit includes the Gore Hulk, which is one of the 2 models, pick 1 enemy model within 3 inches of this unit and roll a dice. If the roll is more than double that model's wound characteristic, it is slain. So you want to kill a 2 wound model, you got to roll 4.
Right.
So a 4-up kills a 2 wound model. A 2-up kills a 1 wound model. That's a very strong ability because you can pick the leader in the unit and stop them from doing things like using command abilities or pull a unit out of coherency and half the unit dies. It's a very strong ability. But to have these units in combat and create that situation is very difficult.
Yeah.
The other model in the unit at the end of the combat phase, roll a dice for each enemy model within 3 inches of this unit's skull grinder. For each 5+ that enemy model's unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Again, really good, but to make the best use of this, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah. All right, Exalted Deathbringer. So don't be fooled. These are 2 different weapons loadouts. You cannot have both of these at the same time, and it'd be a lot cooler if you did. So this guy just feels like he's a challenge. He's going to ward a 5-up, which is good. But on a 6 wound model, it's not really doing that much for you. And he has a 5-up armor save, so it's kind of like, I don't know, how much would you rather just have like a 3-up save normally instead? The unmodified save roll for an attack made with a melee weapon that targets this unit with a ruinous axe and Scourger. The Skullgorger is a 6. The attacking unit suffers D3 mortal wounds after all of its attacks have been resolved. So he kicks back mortal wounds when he crit saves, right?
Yeah, but only if he has the axe and skull gouger. Typically, you don't want him to have the axe and skull gouger, simply because you don't want him receiving the attacks. You want to be attacking with him.
Yeah.
So the impaling spear is almost always the better option here. But it's cooler looking. I think the skull gouger and ruinous axe look way cooler than the impaling spear. So it's one of those. Always model him with the weapon you don't want. But use the weapon you do want.
Yeah. And then add 1 hit rolls for attacks made with this unit when it's wholly within 8 inches of other friendly bloodbound or another friendly bloodbound unit that is a general. So if he sticks around your general, he gets +1 to hit.
Yeah, so he's 2s and 3s, -2, 2 damage, 5 attacks. Okay. He's okay. He's 90 points, but the problem with him is he's not a priest, and you have priests, and he's 90 points, and the priests are 100, so it's 100 or 110. Not being a priest is a big problem.
Yeah, it kind of like I look at this and I kind of ask, like, trying to figure out what his role actually is.
Yep.
Because he's not that fighty, and he doesn't really have exciting special abilities. He's not tanky. So
what are we doing? I don't know.
So what are we doing? It's like it's like the aspiring Deathbringer. It's like okay, I get where you're going with this, but I feel like if you want an aspiring Deathbringer, an exalted Deathbringer, like they need to be bringing a lot more death to earn those names.
Or they need to not be leaders.
Yeah.
They need to be like a weird hero style unit that's not a leader.
Yep. Which I think that's a design space that they have not used enough.
No.
Yeah, it's like if it's that size unit on that size base, it's a leader, right? If it's a hero, it's a leader. Has to be. Like, can't we just get rid of the hero keyword too and just
the thing is they're just pit fighters. They're not really leading anything.
Right.
Anyway. What's the next guy?
Next guy, Herald of Khorne on Blood Throne.
Home run. He's really good.
Yeah, which is funny because I have not ever seen anyone play with these in the past.
Yeah. Heals himself when he does damage. Heals a wound every time he kills a mob. Has the decapitating blow, so he benefits from that sub-faction.
He gets +1 to his chanting rolls if he is within 3 inches of an enemy unit. Like, that is the most Khorne priest thing.
Well, yeah, and then he's got that sweet return bloodletters ability. And he's a priest, and he's a totem.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totem is another one of those things that they just have not done enough with. Yep, that's been a keyword ever since this game started, and it only took until 3rd edition to make it actually mean something other than just being referenced by other war scrolls.
Yeah, the only thing he's got going against him in this season is that he's not a GV. Revelation Champion, GC. But other than that, really great unit. Cool.
Yeah. All right. And reasonably priced too.
Yeah. Like all around. I think he's just a good unit.
Yeah.
Good movement speed, 10 wounds, heals himself, 4-up save.
Yeah. And Orgus Cull, I know you love this guy.
He's still good. Still good. So he and the Mighty Lord of Khorne share the same sculpt.
Yep.
But he is completely different attack profile and just profile in general. He is eligible to fight within 8 inches. Very powerful ability. Piles in an extra 5. Super strong. Can attempt to unbind wizard spells. Pretty good. He's got that reality splitting axe. Very threatening. Not so much anymore because a lot of units that you want to kill have the if this is slain, it suffers wounds instead.
Yeah.
But still very threatening. And he's got the Lord of the Gore-Tide, which is kind of a nice little bonus. If you're running him in a Gore-Tide army, you can kind of like the Blood Secretor, once per battle at the beginning of the combat phase, you can say everybody's rolling an extra murder roll this time, and make the magic happen with your murder rolls. So really good with Reavers and Blood Warriors.
But he is faction locked into Gore-Tide, so if he's in another sub-faction, he's not getting any benefits, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And it's the same thing with, like, I think Drom is in the same boat. I think all the
Unique heroes.
Yeah, all the unique, like all the oh man, what's that game called? Shadespire.
Oh, Shadespire.
What the heck is they call it? Underworld. All the Underworld's factions are all Gore-Tide, and so they're kind of locked in there as well.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
Is that including the ones that are not heroes?
Yeah, they're all. Yeah.
Interesting. So I guess it's like the only exception to. Oh wait,
Yes.
I was thinking Gore Chosen, not Gore-Tide.
Yeah, Gore-Tide.
Silly army and all of its samey words.
All its blood, gore, skull.
Yeah. Lord of Khorne on a juggernaut. This dude
He's a beast.
Face.
2-up save.
Beef cake.
Yeah, he's hard to kill.
Yeah, I love this guy.
He's not a Galatian champion though, so that's the downside. But he is quite hard for your opponent to kill, and he does do some reasonable damage. So you can throw him at monsters, and he can probably survive a round of combat, maybe 2 if you're lucky. But like the idea is that he can tie things down while the rest of your army gets there, or he can hold enemy units on an objective or off the objective because they don't want to retreat. They think they can kill him, even though he's so tanky that they likely won't. So I do find that when what I do is I'll charge him into something that I think he'll survive against, or I'll move him right up to it. And then at the end of my opponent's hero phase, I'll spend a blood tithe point and move them into combat with their big monster, and like, yeah, go ahead, fight them or retreat. It's fine. And typically people will fight him, and it's just like he's so hard to kill that usually they don't. Sometimes they do. They killed him once in all the games I played.
Yeah. He also, like, his attack profile, I think, is pretty strong. Like,
it's okay. He doesn't have enough rend. Is part of the problem. Like, he doesn't have rend 2. He only has rend 1, and so while his attack profile is decent, not having rend 2 is actually a big deal.
Yeah.
The fact that he just does flat three mortal wounds on a charge though is really strong. Holy cow!
Yeah,
that is nasty.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the kind of unit that I love. Like, this is the same sort of thing as the Chaos Lord on Carcadrak.
Yep.
Like, very, very similar sort of war scroll.
Yeah, I really like him too.
All right, Mighty Lord of Khorne. So this is like the generic version of Gorgas Cull, correct?
Yep.
You can bring me their skulls, use a command ability at the start of the combat phase. has to target a Gore Chosen unit. The strike first effect applies to the Gore Chosen unit until the end of the phase.
Almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because like you're picking a hero. None of our heroes are like that great by themselves.
Yeah.
They're like good if you mob enemy units with them.
Yep.
Realm Gorwich list. She's a big win. She's really good.
Yep.
Her ability is relevant. Like everything about this unit is good. Except for her attack profile, but because like we have so many ways to boost the number of attacks, like I can very easily get her to 4 attacks, 2s and a 3s, -2 d6 damage, and that's really scary, right? Like that's not something you want to get hit by.
So where are you getting all the extra attacks from? Because when I was reviewing through this book, I was not seeing a lot of that anymore.
So Bloodsecrator, Wrathmonger, and Lord of the Gore Chosen. 3 attacks.
Oh.
So 1 + 3, 4. And so then she's got this cool ability. Once per battle, at the end of the moving phase, you pick one objective or train feature within 3 inches of this unit. You can mark it. She's got this big banner that she's holding on the model. She sticks her banner in the train, and until the end of the battle, you add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly bloodbound units, so mortals, that are wholly within 8 of that objective. So quite liberal, very easy to do. Huge. Some train pieces are huge. There are usually big train pieces around the center of the map. You just kind of march her over to one and slap that thing on there, and it's at the end of your movement phase too, so very forgiving. You can kind of mosey on over, do a little run roll, plant that thing, and you're done. Also, her Blood Hex is quite good. It's a very good defensive prayer. Pick 1 enemy unit, subtract 1 from attacks characteristics of that unit's melee weapons to a minimum of 1 until your next hero phase. So kind of neuter one of your enemy's more powerful units. 4-up rerollable if you're within range of your train feature. So she's just and she's a priest, so just all around decent unit. I think she's kind of if you probably take 1 of her. If
her prayer is really powerful too.
Yep. Yeah. Blood Hex, yeah. It's really good.
Reducing enemy attacks. Oh man. Skyla, like he has a lot of really cool stuff going on here. Being able to have an 8-inch pile-in, so piling in from downtown, like that's awesome. But like if his brutal fists were 2 damage instead of 1, I'd be like, this guy's super cool. I like him. I would throw him in. But like I'm not sure what you do with this guy.
He's like one of if I were to tier units, he'd be in the bottom tier. He's the worst one of the worst ones. So the problem is he's A, not a priest, B, he takes up a hero slot. So that's 2 things going against him, right?
Yep.
He doesn't do a lot of damage. He's got a low save. I guess he can unbind spells, but like I just don't know what this guy's doing. He's not a Galatian champion because he's a named character. Like he's just got nothing going for him. That I'd rather something else just every time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like I always try and find something that you can do with a unit or a hero, and like the only thing, like he has 1 trick, and
pile in 5.
He just cannot like execute on that because his attack profile sucks.
Yep.
Scar Bloodwrath.
He's a house. He's insane.
I love those abilities where you can bring somebody back from the dead.
He's insane. Like he's still good.
Yeah.
He's still gonna see play. He's not gonna be in every list, but like he's still a good unit.
Yeah. And if you're the kind of player that just likes that sort of thing that he does, where he's, that weird piece that's like this fighty hero that's gonna take on a swarm and die and then pop back and do it again. Like, if that's your bag, this is your man.
Yeah, his murderous paragon with the Wrathmongers, like, is that just that ability just doesn't matter that much?
Yeah. I mean, that's really a narrative ability. That's why that's there.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be the Wrathmonger hero, and what else can he do to Wrathmongers?
Yeah, his attack profile is really good too, and it's a little situational, but it's not as situational as you might think. You can run into combat where there's like a mob of units like pressed up against an enemy hero and make like all your attacks on the enemy hero.
Right.
So quite good. And then he dies and comes back, and you get a blood type point, and maybe you get 2 because you killed the enemy hero. Who knows? But quite good. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a cool concept. I love it.
He's also 6 wounds instead of 5. No.
Yeah. And, you can use him as a solid ally, throw him into a Slaves to Darkness army, and you can have him and Eternus doing the same, reappearing magic trick.
Yeah, you know what? He's kind of good, like, outside of Khorne, too. I wonder if Eternus would be a good ally in this army.
I don't think you can ally him, can you?
You can ally slaves.
Yeah, but it's conditional.
I think you're right.
All right. Hold on. Let me look. Chaos and Blades of Khorne and pitch battle profiles and down to the bottom.
Can't coalition him.
Can't coalition. Slaves to Darkness, excluding units that are Zeech and units that can or must be given a mark of chaos. So, I think you can.
I think I can.
Yeah, interesting.
And those units gain the Khorne keyword
only if they're coalition. I was talking about the allies.
Oh no! In coalition, 2 in every 4 units in this army can be coalition unit from Slaves to Darkness faction that has the mark of chaos. Oh, he doesn't have the mark of chaos.
Yep.
Never mind.
Yeah, so he would have to be an ally.
All right.
Yeah.
Skull Grinder.
I love the concept of this guy. I love his model. It's so very cool, and he's just wild and crazy enough to, like, I don't know. He's a weird 90-point hero that's just fun to send flying at the enemy and just be like, hey, I got an attack that does 3 damage. I could spike this on you and kill your guy, and that's pretty cool.
I think he's cool. I think he's here's the funny thing about him. So the combo with him is actually use him with the dragon, the Vorgrath, because Vorgrath is a bloodbound hero, and so he can increase the rend of the dragon without like being a priest.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that like his special ability to give somebody else better rend.
Yep.
Like that's just awesome, and he doesn't have to stay on the battlefield either.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I don't think he's like an overtly great unit, but he's kind of fun. Again, this is another guy I kind of look at like a pit fighter. I don't necessarily think he should be a hero.
Yeah.
I think this should be like a unit that can't get artifacts. It's just a unit, single model, dude.
You know what would almost make sense to me is if Khorne just had its own like special category for heroes like this.
Yeah, like they can't take artifacts. They're like special heroes that are just dudes that really fought a lot.
Yeah.
These are the fighty guys. They're gore chosen.
Yep.
All right, who's next?
Who's next? Skullmaster, Herald of Khorne.
Skullmaster's good.
Yeah. Is your bloodletter hero on Juggernaut?
Oh wait, no, he's the poopy doopy one. He's actually not good.
Yeah, not a priest.
Not a priest. Yep, that's a big problem. You know, he's fine if you make him a priest, but the issue is he's not a Galatian champion either. So it's kind of like, why are you taking this guy? Unless you're trying to make Blood Crushers battle line, but you can't think of a situation where that's necessary. Blood Crushers don't need to be battle line. You can take a unit of Blood Crushers; they're still good.
Yeah.
You're gonna want to take other stuff with them anyway.
Yep. I mean, cool that he has decapitating blow doing 2 damage though. Like,
yeah,
that's not nothing.
It's not nothing, but he's only got 4 attacks, and you're gonna have maybe 5 when you use your Blood Scrader. How many times are you gonna fight with this guy?
Right. All right. The Skull Taker, 4-up ward, just right off the rip.
So this is what I was talking about. There's a lot of units like that. 4-up ward, weird, right? It's more frequent than you think.
So if he makes an unmodified hit roll of a 6, it causes 2 mortal wounds and the attack sequence ends. If the target is a hero, it causes 3 mortal wounds instead.
It's pretty cool.
Hero's Bane, at the start of combat, you can say the Skull Taker is issuing a challenge. If you do, pick 1 enemy hero within 3 inches. Until the end of that phase, the strike first effect applies to this unit, but all of the attacks in that phase have to target that enemy hero. I mean, okay. I'm not sure why that's there.
So he can strike first if he wants. That's it.
Yeah.
But all his attacks have to attack the guy he's striking first.
Yeah.
So it's a cool little way for him to strike first. So what's also interesting about this unit is he never had a ward before. He was always like a re-rollable save character. So the 4-up ward that he gets is kind of GW's way of like making him a re-rollable 4-up without doing that.
Yeah. He's a re-rollable 4-up without being a re-rollable 4-up.
Right.
And then Skulls for the Skull Throne. If he uses the Blades of Khorne army, each time a hero is slain by attacks made by this model, you receive 1 additional blood type point.
He's strangely he's better than he looks.
Yeah.
He's a weird unit. I don't know how else.
Yeah. The model's cool.
Yeah, the model's cool. He does some reasonable damage. He's good.
Oh.
Slaughter Priest. He's the bomb.
He's long been a staple now.
He's so good. He's locked in now. The big difference between him and Ritualist is he can unbind spells. So that's a big deal.
Right.
Which is it's the main reason you don't want like a million Ritualists. She's limited.
Right.
And she's cheaper too, so for good reason.
And he still has Red Boil just doing D6 mortal wounds to somebody.
Yeah, but people look at that and they're like, "Oh man, that's so good." It's really not that crazy. It's definitely decent, but Bloodbathed Axe is actually quite strong now. 3s and 3s, -2, 2 damage. Also, with 3s and 3s, -2, 2 damage, you can often be 5 attacks at 3s and 3s, or 2s into 3s, -2, 2 damage.
Yeah.
Because of all the different stacking abilities. So sometimes even up to 6 if you get all 3 +1 attacks. I've had situations where like all my slaughter priests and priests gang up on a big monster and just take it down.
Yeah.
Anyway, good unit. Valkia.
Valkia. Can we please just petition Games Workshop to give her a new model that is appropriately big and awesome and has a war scroll that also reflects that?
So technically she is a herald of Khorne.
Yeah.
So it is my thought that she may be one of the heralds in the upcoming 12 heralds to get released, but not in the first set.
Interesting.
But you know, there's hope.
There's hope.
But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, she basically has like the generic Stormcast attack profile, but with Rend 2, which is not nothing, but I mean, I certainly would have liked more than that out of her. Add 3 to the bravery characteristic of other bloodbound units while they're wholly within 16 inches. However, they can't retreat. Like, huh? During deployment, she can be set up off the battlefield and deep strike down.
Yeah, but like, look at the rest of that ability.
Yeah.
Pick one enemy unit within 10 inches after she lands.
Yeah.
Roll a dice. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2+, the enemy unit suffers mortal wounds equal to the roll. So basically, it does D6 mortal wounds, kind of.
Yeah.
For free. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Like, that's definitely a cool use for it. And she has a ward, which is also pretty good.
Yep. She's got a 5-up ward, and her attack profile's not bad either.
Yeah. The thing is that she's really just a combat hero. She's not doing really much of anything else for you other than that.
So add 3 to the bravery characteristic for other friendly bloodbound units.
Yeah.
Does that apply to like healing when it comes to your bravery characteristic for your heroic ability?
Probably.
Because that's kind of cool. That's a nice little bonus, maybe.
Yeah. That might be a thing to do, I guess. All right.
Yep.
Into units, the Blood Warriors.
These guys are like champs. I'm telling you right now, I think Blood Warriors might be one of the best units in the game.
Yeah. Because they're throwing like a decent attack profile.
Mm-hmm.
They have a 3-up save. They're reflecting mortal wounds back.
Not necessarily.
Oh, if you have Gorefists.
If you have Gorefists, yeah. But I think their better profile is actually the paired axes.
Yeah.
Because it is more likely that you'll get more value from the paired axes at 3 attacks than the Gorefists. Because attack volume isn't as prevalent as it once was.
Yep, I agree. I would personally go with the paired axes because I think it's just more reliable. You don't have to rely on whatever your opponent is doing to get that extra damage.
Yep, you can rely on your own internal buffs. Also, like these guys pair super well with Curse.
Yep.
And since you're running like a billion jillion priests, Curse is like your best friend with Blood Warriors. Blood Warriors have so much going for them. They have a 3-up save, so they're pretty tanky. They have 2 wounds. They have the potential for a 4-up rally, and they get maximum value up to 4-up rally because they can hit exactly 10 wounds on the dot. And they also make 2 murder rolls instead of 1 when they die, so they 5-ups equal to their wounds. And they get 3 attacks, 3s and the 4s, -1 red wound damage each. I think they're just overall a really strong unit. The Gorglaves also can be the leaders now, and the Gorglaive does a surprising amount of damage sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, like my experiences with Chaos Warriors is that they're really good. They overperform, and these guys are basically just Khorne Chaos Warriors. They have a little bit of a different flavor, but they're fundamentally Khorne Chaos Warriors. And whenever they die, you get 2 murder rolls instead of 1.
Yeah, because they're swinging.
Yeah. Bloodletters, 2-inch range, 2 attacks, do mortal wounds on 6s. Pretty awesome.
Yep. These guys are your primary source of damage.
Yeah. And then you can get them on mortal wounds on 5s if you're going all in on the appropriate subfaction.
Yeah, these guys are nuts. They're like your primary source of damage in the demon faction, and you can summon them. I mean, there's definitely a reason to buy bloodletters.
Yeah, I would agree.
They're your highest. They're basically tied with your highest damage dealing unit per point.
Yeah, they're just going to throw a lot of damage around.
Yeah,
and you definitely want units that do that. Now, personally, I'm always a little bit nervous about units like that one in particular, just because they feel a little bit like glass cannons.
The Reavers or the bloodletters?
Well, both, but mostly bloodletters.
Bloodletters are no longer glass cannons. They are 2 wound models.
True.
So the fact that they're 40 wounds and they have a bravery of 10 is a huge, huge bump. And they also have a lot of ways to heal bloodletters, like return models back to the unit outside of rally. So if you're running a bloodletter list, you've got lots of ways of to get recursive models. They're much better than they were previously.
Yeah. All right, Blood Reavers. They've either got Reaver blades or Meat Ripper axes. The axes have rend, and the blades have better to hit.
You always take the Ripper axes.
Yeah.
You always take the Ripper axe. The rend is too important. These guys are a lot better than they were, I think, in the previous book. They have the built-in 2 attacks per model, which is huge. Before they were just 1, and they got lots of bonuses to attack.
Yeah.
They still add 1 to charge rolls. They do not add 1 to run rolls anymore.
Yeah.
They get +1 to wound now within range of a Khorne totem. That's pretty strong. So like your blood thrones and your Bloodsecrators give them +1 to wound. So very strong. So a lot of times you're going to see these guys for 2 attacks apiece, 3s and a 3s, -1/1 damage at 80 points for 10. That's kind of a steal. That's a good attack profile for 80 points.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like they're very, very inexpensive, and I think that's one of the chief attractive things about these guys.
And they also do murder rolls on death, so don't forget that. 10 murder rolls is very scary, and they get a blood type point when they die. So not bad.
Yeah, it's silly when you like start thinking about all of that stuff with Khorne units. It's like, yeah, they have this thing on their war scroll, but when they die, they also do X.
Yeah.
And Y, you know?
Yeah, no, it's super solid.
Yeah. All right. Claws of Karnak. I mean, these guys are cool. These are one of the Warcry warbands.
So their attack profile is kind of misleading. They do a little bit less damage than the Blood Reavers do when they're buffed, but they have this sweet like pack hunt, not the pack hunter ability, the scent of blood. The scent of blood. They can make a normal move before the battle round begins, and they can contest objectives right away. So very strong ability from a strategic standpoint. They can actually move very quickly too. So like you move 6 inches turn 1, you move another 6 inches plus run plus instinct. I mean, you're moving upwards of like 18 inches plus 2d6 in the first turn pretty easily. And if you have a blister, you'll run and charge. So, I mean, you can get right up the field, right in front of your opponent, and then decide I'm gonna use my or my murder lust to like move directly into combat with you on turn one, and just really tie them up for like one turn. And in the first turn of the game, sometimes that can be so brutal. Especially when like magic is their main means of like removing a unit. If you tie down your enemy's forces turn one, they can often like lose out on battle tactics. So a really scary tactical unit, but not very good when it comes to like melee attack. They're just very quick.
Yeah. All right. Flesh Hounds got the random burning roar still. They're throwing 4 attacks each on 3s and 4s. They get +2 to charge. They can attempt to unbind spells, and the leader can get an extra attack. They move 8. They're 2 wounds each. So I mean, these guys seem like they're an interesting, like little like, just like a bomb of attacks.
Yeah, they're a lot better when you use the -1 to rend prayer on them.
Yeah.
But if they don't have it, they're kind of pillow-fisted.
Yeah.
But they are high volume attacks, like you said. Again, it is 3s and 4s. 4s are the big funnel that they have to, the threshold that they have to cross.
Yeah.
And they don't do that very well. So oftentimes they like hit really well, and then they don't wound very well.
Yeah.
Good summonable unit, good screen too. They have a nice wide base, so that you can take them a lot of real estate with them.
Yep. That's why I've been thinking that the Chaos Marauder Horsemen are better than people have been saying they think they are. Like, they have the same big base. They can take up a lot of area, and they're fast.
Yeah, and they also summon as a 5 model unit, so you can really string them out.
Yep. Blood Crushers. So they got the same decapitating blow because they're not bloodthirsters, bloodletter dudes. They do mortal wounds when they charge. Other than that, that's all these guys really do.
They're good. They're fast bloodletters that are a little bit tanky and do a little bit less damage, or not a little bit less, a lot less damage than bloodletters, but they fill a totally different role.
Yeah, they're definitely. I mean, they've got an 8-inch move, so they're kind of hustling down the battlefield compared to a lot of other things.
And they have a 3-up rather than a 5-up save.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference.
Yep. Yeah, they don't look like they would have that kind of save because they're just kind of naked dudes riding on top of Juggernaut. But I guess the Juggernaut protects, right?
Yeah, it's the kind of unit that you really want. You want 1 of or 2 of in a bloodletter style list, but you're not going to fill your list with them. They're a really great tool in the toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are Garrix Reavers are probably one of the best units in the army.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one thing that matters, and I think it's Grizzly trophies.
Okay. So it's in Blades of Khorne army. At the end of the combat phase, this unit is on the battlefield, and enemy models were slain by attacks made with this unit in that phase. You receive 1 additional blood type point.
So these guys have an extra wound per model now.
Yeah.
They cost a little bit less than a unit of standard Blood Reavers.
Yep.
It's only a 5 model unit, so they don't have to worry about coherency.
Yep.
And you get this little bonus ability here that lets you get a couple extra blood type points. It actually makes a big deal. Oh.
Yeah.
15 attacks, 3s and the 4s, neg 1 damage. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to kill some models. You just have to send them into the right things that are like squishy that you can just mow some guys down.
Yeah, squishy that don't deal a lot of damage. So, like, send them into a battle line unit and start farming some blood tithe each row.
We already talked about these guys when we talked about Drum.
Yeah.
Karnak.
Khorne, he's kind of a loser, I think, but you could make him work. It's not like he's a complete loser. His profile's not super great if you look at it, and he's a little expensive, but he still does damage when he unbinds spells. He's got 2 to his charge. And then anytime you summon Fleshhounds, you can summon them wholly within 8 of that unit, even if it's wholly with units within 9 of an enemy unit. So you can like summon Fleshhounds right in combat.
Yeah, that's definitely good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely a cool effect anyway. Korgorath. I feel like this guy they done him dirty.
I don't think he's as good as. I mean, I'd like to see this guy see play, but his real utility is in his ability to stop people from spending command points to ignore battle shock. So, like, I know some people that want to like dump Korgorath into their lists, and I think it's funny, but I can't take it seriously.
He gets extra murder rolls when he blows up.
The 5 murder rolls is pretty good, but he's a little expensive, and horrific predators is probably the thing I like most about this guy.
Yeah. All right, Magor's Fiends. These are Blood Warrior Underworld's Warband.
So the big changes here is that they are now 3 wound models instead of 2 wound models. It's a big deal. They can rally because they are bloodbound. I think they can rally on a 4+. Let me just double check. Let's clear. I'm not sure if it's just battle line. I think it's friendly bloodbound units with a wounds characteristic of 3 or less. So they can actually rally with a 4, which isn't super relevant, but sometimes it can be. Magor's Axe is pretty good. 3s and the 3s, neg 2d3 damage. And their standard attack profile isn't bad. It's just 2 attacks, 3s and 4s, neg 1.
And they get a free Fleshhound too.
And you get a free Fleshhound, and you just set it up anywhere within 9 inches of them. It doesn't count as like part of your starting army, just something you set up.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Mighty Skull Crushers, 5 wounds on a 2-up save. That's wild.
These guys are nuts. You'll see them in a lot of armies. I don't think that they are like an auto include, though. They're just very efficient tanks. So if you're looking for a tar pit, this is your tar pit. They're really good.
Yeah. And they're throwing a decent amount of damage around, too.
Yeah, it's not as much as you'd think.
Yeah. The fact that it's all 1 damage is kind of a...
That's the kicker. The fact that it's 1 damage attacks is what makes it not so great.
Yeah.
But they do hold the line for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
They're like what the Gore Gruntas used to be before they got overly killy.
Yeah, these guys just stick and they don't move unless your opponent has a lot of bonuses to rend and neg save.
Yeah. Skull Reapers, they throw a lot of attacks and do mortal wounds on 6s to hit.
So these are like they're like the mortal equivalent of bloodletters. Yeah. They do slightly less damage than bloodletters in the bloodletter battalion thing, the slaughter host.
Yeah.
But they have access to 4-up rallies. They have better saves, and they do wounds in addition. So they have some slightly greater potential for damage, and they're a little bit tankier. So both really great options as hammers. I'd say in terms of utility, they're probably just about equal.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I think I like the Skull Reapers better. A lot of it is liking the sculpts better.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, they just look cool.
Yeah, I agree. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Also, can we just be very, very thankful that these guys, every new book that has come out, their war scroll has gotten simpler and easier to read.
Oh my god. Well,
I
and
remember
although
the first version of these, oh my god, I could not figure out what the hell they did.
and strangely enough, like every version, it's gotten worse. Like
Really?
they're a significantly worse unit now than they've ever been, but they're still all stars because the game as a whole, I think the power creep is going down.
Yeah. Cool. I really like these guys a lot.
Me too. I love them.
Yeah. And the Wrathmongers. I think this is our last unit.
These guys are significantly worse than they've ever been, but they're still like a good unit. I don't know how else to put it. They are a sweet force multiplier.
Yeah, they're like the most reliable source of getting extra attacks for your army.
Yes and no. Like it depends on your approach to mobility. If you're using like the Bloodthirster with the 3d6 charge, it's really hard to keep up with them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're using all the little mobility mechanics that allow everybody to kind of move as a big unit and as a swarm, like the Bloodstoker and the pick 3 units and move them d6 inches, that kind of stuff, you can kind of keep them behind your units that are fighting and get extra bonus damage in. Blood Fury is better than people think. How often do you see people roll 1s to hit? It happens a lot.
Yeah.
So
especially with rerolling 1s not really being a thing anymore.
Yeah. So like a lot of unmodified hit rolls that are 1s, because there's not as many rerolls now. That Blood Fury ability is actually more relevant than people realize. So stuffing these guys in combat sometimes against a high attack volume unit can really just result in that unit just nearly killing itself. So pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. And I believe that is it. Oh.
Mazeral. He's from Forge World. I don't know. I haven't really looked into him too much.
Oh, Skull Cannon.
Oh, of course. I can't believe we didn't talk about it. Skull Cannon's insane now. It's really good. It offers a level of utility that we didn't really have before at like with some consistent damage output. Prior to this book, it was 30 inches, 1 attack, 3s and 3s, then 2d6 damage, which was extremely swingy. It wasn't very good. Sometimes you'd hit and you do 1 damage. Sometimes you'd attack and you just miss. And so like on the off chance, which was like 20% of the shots you made with this thing, maybe 1 shot a game with a cannon was worth taking. It just made the cannon suck. But now that it's 18 inches, it's 4 attacks. The damage is a lot more reliable. And this thing's kind of a brawler when it gets into combat. It's actually decent. You basically attack the whole profile. So pretty cool unit. Put some pressure on your opponent to like come to you. Highly recommend. Really good.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's very nice to have a ranged option that can throw some wounds on there. And I feel like this is doing the right amount of damage for the amount of points that it is.
Yeah.
Like it's just like in that nice sweet spot where you can just throw one in a list and it'll do some work for you.
Yeah, I've been playing with two. I like them.
Yeah, and you don't have to like overcommit to it.
No, you just kind of keep them out there. You want your opponent to come to you and just keep shooting people. Skull Altar. You didn't even talk about the Skull Altar.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked around the Skull Altar a lot.
Yeah, that's true. Basically, gives you a lot of bonuses to prayers.
Yeah.
And then Witchbane's relevant 2.5% of the spells that are cast.
Mm-hmm.
If you flub a spell, you take D6 mortals instead of D3.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, it's good. Doubles the range of invocations, which we didn't talk about yet. All the invocations are good. Yeah. Every single one. Bleeding Icon's good because it poses bravery.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Hexgorger Skulls are good because they hose magic. So if you wanna fuck your friend that's playing their magic army on a Friday night, you can bring like Hexgorger Skulls. And then Wrath Axe has always been a favorite. One of the things that people don't realize with these is that like they have very big profiles on their bases. So if you know the maximum movement range of your opponent's units, you can kind of like stuff these at their max movement to really keep them from moving as efficiently as they would like. And you can also bottleneck pile-ins with them, which is really cool because the what they call the rules, the coherency rules kind of restrict people when they're piling in now.
Yeah.
So use those like that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm ready to go to bed now.
Me too. I'm tired.
All right,
but it's a good book.
Yeah, I dig it. It's fun.
Yeah. All right, man.
We will have to discuss this further. I may be starting a new army. Yeah.
There's a lot of directions you can take.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later.
Hey.